Chapter 509, Get Away. Chapter 509, Get Away. Reverie _ No. No. Feng Yang yelled. He didn't want to die, he couldn't die now. He possessed a divine beast's bloodline and had a chance to become a shattering void tier elite in the future. Moreover, he hadn't taken revenge for his brother's death and the hatred of losing his leg, yet he was actually going to die in the hands of his enemy. Not resigned, he was not resigned. That's right, just this resentfulness. Linghan said. When you killed and hurt people brazenly, did you ever think of how the people you bullied felt? So, do as you would be done by. There will always be someone who can punish you. And you're very unfortunate to have met me. Be a good man in the next life. Whatever, just by your actions in this life, you still want to be a man. Better off as a pig and eaten to pay for your sins. 1. Linghan stomped hard and Feng Yang's entire head instantly sunk into the mud. His limbs twitched for a while, and soon drooped down. He was obviously thoroughly dead. Linghan! 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 Shi Shun roared angrily at the sky, bristling with anger. He was truly furious to the extreme. Bring it on if you have the guts, this lord will battle 300 rounds with you. Linghan challenged. Shi Shun couldn't possibly dare to accept the challenge. Running over, he would only be suppressed by the god's skeletal remains. Linghan laughed loudly and said, if you guys don't come here, this lord will leave. Besides, you guys better think it through. If you want to chase after this lord, maybe you'll give away your life. He walked over and waved his hand, storing the god's skeletal remains in the Black Tower, but a ruthless mental shock immediately charged right at his consciousness, almost making him hack out blood. He could move freely under the godly presence, but touching the god's skeletal remains was another matter. Linghan resisted with great difficulty, not letting anyone see an inkling of it. If you want to chase this lord, bring it on. He looked again at Ao Feng, who had woken up. Don't you die, your life will be left for my father to reap. Or else, my father will be left with regret. Ao Feng simply wanted to raise his middle finger at Linghan, but cold sweat was all over his body. He was completely out of strength, so he couldn't possibly raise his hand. Linghan descended the mountain in large strides. In the sky, 9 divine senses constantly locked onto him. 8 were filled with killing intent, while 1 had a hint of friendliness. That was definitely Yu family's elder. In fact, the more valiant he was, the happier Yu family's elder would be. He was the descendant of the family, although not surnamed Yu. However, the other 8 spiritual infant tiers never attacked, probably having qualms about the god's skeletal remains. Perhaps they were waiting for Linghan to be inattentive and careless to launch a sudden surprise attack, killing him. Besides, it would be an extremely problematic matter if a heaven-grade alchemist died at the Winter Moon sect, so they obviously wanted to wait for him to be slightly further to attack. Linghan! Linghan! Yu Kaiyu quickly rushed over. After leaving the mystery realm, he went straight back to the Winter Moon sect, so he obviously arrived several days earlier than Linghan. Brother Yu. Linghan laughed. Master Han, Pa. Yu Kaiyu rushed over, and snatched Linghan by the chest, picking him up. You bastard, you obviously knew I'm your older cousin, yet you still made me call you Master Han. Master Han, let my aunt out to judge what's right and wrong. Linghan laughed loudly and said, say, cousin, do you still remember that we made a bet and you still owe me something? When did we make such a bet? Yu Kaiyu was at a loss. Linghan casually tossed an identity token at Yu Kaiyu. Han Lin. Yu Kai received the identity token and finally realized that Han Lin was precisely Linghan. When they entered Duan Zhengji's old hideout, Linghan once made a bet with him whether Linghan could extinguish that many corpse soldiers in a limited time, and obviously he lost. So, this guy had already anticipated it. You're too crafty, Yu Kai criticized. He finally understood why Han Lin would gift him Restore Spirit Pill so generously, almost like a dolt. After all the answers were revealed, he was too embarrassed to criticize Linghan. It couldn't be helped that he'd accepted those gifts and was now partial, no? Linghan laughed loudly and said, I'll come see you in the future. As for now, you head back first. I'm afraid the old bastards will suddenly attack and drag you in. Can you block it? Yu Kaiyu said seriously. No problem, Linghan said full of confidence. Yu Kai-yu nodded. He fought alongside Ling Han in the 12-Heaven Mystery Realm and was very confident in Ling Han. Since Ling Han said it was no problem, then there definitely wouldn't be a problem. Alright, remember to come visit me with my aunt and uncle, he reminded again. Got it, got it. Why are you so much like an old woman? Ling Han waved his hand to dismiss him. You're the old woman, Yu Kai-yu retorted, turning to leave as he kept waving at Ling Han. Ling Han also waved his hand, and then turned to leave, advancing in large strides. His mental spirit was raised to the limit, and once he felt the slightest rustle of leaves, he would immediately enter the Black Tower. He wasn't afraid of what anyone thought now since the news of the god's treasure trove got out anyway. Even shattering void-tier elites could possibly attack him. There truly wasn't anything to be afraid of. Considering, wasn't there someone who opened the Sagittarius Palace previously? Why did the key circulate into the Jiang family's hands? Obviously, that person was slaughtered. After half a day, he was far from the Winter Moon sect. Presumably the 8 people who followed behind should attack soon. Ling Han smiled and jumped up abruptly into a large surging river. Pu Tong, water splashed everywhere, but he didn't float up, entering directly into the Black Tower. Xiao, 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 9 figures descended from the sky. Each person revealed an astounded look because they no longer felt Ling Han's presence. However, an old man revealed a hint of a joyful smile in his astonishment. That was obviously Yu family's elder. How could he possibly disappear? Shahi Shun yelled furiously. This boy must have some special method that can shield his presence and tracks, Ao family's elder conjectured, his gaze extremely baleful. His descendant, Ao Feng, who was most likely to advance into spiritual infant tier, had his spirit base crippled. Chase separately. The 9 people immediately moved separately. Yu family's elder obviously had other plans. If he encountered Ling Han, not only would he not seize Ling Han, but also think of a way to bring him away. However, they didn't know that the Black Tower turned into a speck that flowed with the surging stream and was rapidly rushing into the distance. This river would finally return to the sea, the exit of the desolate north. Ling Han didn't care so much. He entered the Black Tower and reunited with his mother. Son. After seeing Ling Han, Yu Hongchang, who'd stopped her tears, instantly cried in streams again, hugging Ling Han, unwilling to let go. She'd already waited 18 years by now and had assumed there would be no chance in this life for a reunion, but heaven was not cold to her, and finally, she saw her son again. Ling Han was also stirred up with emotion. He finally had a father and mother in this life. Chapter 510, Going Solo. Chapter 510, Going Solo. Reverie _ The mother and son spoke for a long, long time. It was basically Yu Hongchang asking how he spent the many years. Ling Han naturally reported the good and not the bad, and when she found out that her son had become a heaven-grade alchemist, Yu Hongchang was shocked speechless. No wonder Ao Feng and the others called Ling Han Master Ling. Turns out her so was quite accomplished. After chatting for half a day, Ling Han said, "Mother, let me introduce you to some people." He brought Yu Hongchang over to see Liu Yutong and the others. "It's our honor to see Mistress." Kan Yi, Zhu Wuju, and Guang Yuan paid respects kneeling on one knee, while the 3 girls sweetly called her auntie. Hu Niu was somewhat muddled, biting on a finger. Yu Hongchang was instantly unable to conceal her happiness. These 3 girls were all so charming, especially Zhu Xian'er, who was so beautiful that even she would be touched. Her son was truly fortunate to find such beautiful wives. The 3 girls obviously ingratiated themselves intentionally. This was their future mother-in-law. Even if Ling Han wasn't interested in them, as long as they captured the heart of the mother-in-law, would they still fear not being able to become Ling Han's wife? "Son, is this your daughter?" Seeing Hu Niu, Yu Hongchan was involuntarily somewhat dumbfounded. Her son was only so mature, and he already has such a large daughter. Hu Niu stuck her hands on her hips and said in all seriousness, "Definitely not. Niu is Ling Han's wife." Yu Hongchan was speechless. This girl was only so old, and she said she wanted to be her son's wife. How long would her son have to wait? How long would she also have to wait before holding a grandson in her arms? However, this little girl was also really charming, delicate and beautiful, and after she grew up, her looks probably wouldn't be inferior to Zhu Xian'er's. He, take the adults and keep the small one, all would be Ling family's people in the future. If Ling Dongxing dared to be so fickle, Yu Hongchang would definitely turn into a lioness, but it would be different for her son. The more wives the better, and best that all of them had big butts and could give birth to more grandsons and granddaughters for her. At this time, Ling Han had no room to interrupt. Yu Hongchan took the absolute initiative as she pulled on the Liu Yu Tong and the other two girls, chattering away like they were already a family. Hu Niu was unadapted to such an atmosphere and began to eat again, not fearing that being able to eat so much would scare the future mother-in-law. Can Yi, your path of martial arts is not by my side. Ling Han called Can Yi over. Following me, you can only become an expert in the future, but not a master of a generation. He paused shortly, then went on, I hope you can become a great master in the way of the saber, the emperor of sabers. Can Yi's breathing instantly sped up. He'd never thought Ling Han had such high expectations for him. He put up no pretenses, half kneeling as he said, Master Han, I definitely won't disappoint your expectations. Ling Han nodded and said, I'll give you enough resources, but at most to send you to the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. The following road you'll have to walk on your own. However, the path you take on your own is the true martial arts that belongs to you. I understand. Can Yi nodded. Ling Han pondered and said, you can first go to Middle State. I'll be going there next, but not under the identity of Ling Han. Can Yi understood. Everyone knew that Ling Han acquired the 12 Palaces legacy, and even knew the location of a god's treasure trove. If Ling Han still casually ran to the Middle State, he'd be broken into pieces by shattering Void Tier elites immediately. I'll still be called Han Lin. You can take note, but don't inquire intentionally, Ling Han followed. Yes. Can Yi nodded repeatedly. Ling Han threw Can Yi several spatial rings filled with all sorts of medicinal ingredients and other ingredients from within the Black Tower. This needed several spatial rings to pack, so it could be imagined how many things were inside. Can Yi was not at all reserved. He kept his appreciation in his heart. If Ling Han needed anything in the future, he would be Ling Han's saber, slashing towards any enemy. Go. Ling Han let Can Yi out of the Black Tower. The surging river water naturally couldn't do anything to a spiritual pedestal tier warrior. The Black Tower drifted with the waves, and after 10 days, Ling Han finally came out of the Black Tower. At this moment, he was already far from the Winter Moon Sect's territory. Having not found Ling Han in those many days, those spiritual infant tier cultivators completely lost track of him. However, these people were very likely to ambush him at the Fallen Moon Gorge, the land that had to be passed to enter the desolate north. Spiritual infant tier experts ambushing a spiritual pedestal tier 1. Saying this was extremely laughable, but Ling Han had a god's skeletal remains that even spiritual infant tiers dared not approach, so, obviously, they could only ambush him, not daring to let Ling Han summon the god's corpse. Ling Han shook his head inwardly. The 2 god corpses weren't preserved properly and were sucked of their godly essence, so the god tier's oppressive might was actually continuously fading. It was probably not long before they completely turned to normal bones. However, he didn't care. Suppressing others with god's bones was no help at all to his path of martial arts, and if it hadn't been for saving his mother this time, he actually wouldn't have wanted to use it. There were too many resources in the Black Tower, such as king-tier beast's meat, high-tier origin crystals, various medicinal ingredients, and spiritual liquid. With these things added together, Ling Han's cultivation advanced to late stage of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier in a dozen days, arriving not far from the flower blossom tier. His brute force finally advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier as well, but the improvement rate began to slow down. After all, it caught up to Ling Han's tier, unlike before where it improved at an explosive speed. Everyone's improvements were evident. Yu Hongchang, who was originally at the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier, improved to the 4th layer in roughly half a month's time. It was clear how much benefit she received from the Black Tower. In half a month, I can charge at the flower blossom tier, Ling Han muttered. If those old bastards still dare to bully me, I'll use Black Tower's power boost again to crush and kill each and every one of them, making them drop the idea forever. Advancing into the flower blossom tier meant that he would finally take a true step in martial arts and break away from the identity of a mortal, possessing 200 years more lifespan and being able to fly in flesh. After another day, the majestic fallen moon gorge appeared before him. It was as if a mark cut by a divine saber and could almost be claimed a wonder. He walked over in large strides. He had to go to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall because he'd once promised to let Long Yongchang and the others observe him refining Restore Spirit Pill. In the end, he had Liu Jitong directly send the medicinal pill to Rain Country. However, there were many medium-level Earth-grade medicinal pills he could refine, so he'd just change one to refine. Xiao, an attack stormed over, as fast as lightning. Ling Han's instincts were faster than his consciousness, entering right into the Black Tower. This attack was too terrifying, reaching the level of the spiritual infant tier. Not to mention that he didn't even have the time to activate the Thunder Battle Armor. Even if could, it wouldn't be able to block a spiritual infant tier's heavy attack. The gap was truly too great. Hong, the place he was originally at, instantly became a deep pit as a giant mushroom cloud soared into the sky. The destructive power of the spiritual infant tier was too terrifying. This was aiming for his life. Chapter 511 Ambush. Chapter 511 Ambush. Reverie _ Through the Black Tower, Ling Han observed and saw a skinny dark old man appear. He looked ordinary but emitted a baleful presence, frightening people out of their wits. This was of course a spiritual infant tier being, but what surprised Ling Han even more was that the old man had the presence of the dead. Corpse Chi. This old man was from the Thousand Corpse sect. After staying silent for so long, the Thousand Corpse sect finally moved. There wasn't just one, as another short and fat old man appeared, looking like a merchant. His eyes were squinted, but as his eyes opened and closed, a shocking ruthless spirit was emitted. Didn't hit, the skinny and dark old man said. That spatial spirit tool is truly out of the ordinary, being able to block your attack, the short and fat old man said. It certainly is remarkable, the skinny and dark old man said. However, if this thing could be obtained by our sect, then whom would our sect need to fear? Haha, that's right. The tubby old man also rubbed his palms, laughing loudly. The problem was, how would they get that treasure? They didn't even know where Ling Han was, so they couldn't even kill him. Nine Clouds, you've dealt with that kid, what weaknesses could we take advantage of? The tubby old man said towards one side. Elder Nine Clouds surfaced and said respectfully, Elder Tian Che, that kid's martial arts talent is surprising, and he has a keen divine sense. I've wanted to attack time and time again, but have returned empty-handed. This is the North region where spiritual infant tier warriors are kings. This old man won't believe that even a flower blossom tier junior can't be dealt with. Elder Tian Che was determined, a shockingly chilling glare emitted from his eyes. Guard here, and once he appears, immediately take his life, the skinny and dark old man said. What? They were startled simultaneously as their gazes turned towards the valley's opening, seeing 8 old men tread over slowly. Within a few steps, they appeared before them. So it's Winter Moon Sect's fellow brothers. Elder Tian Che cupped his hands in obeisance. Mph, who's calling you Winter Moon Sect's brothers? Shahi Shun said coldly. Since you've seen us, hurry up and get lost. Get lost? Elder Tian Che sneered. Shahi Shun, you do know what our sect is? The elder of our sect is an almighty shattering void tier elite. 7 senior sect guardians are all at the heaven tier, 33 law kings are at the deity transformation tier, and spiritual infant tier experts like us are in the 100. Hearing his words, Shahi Shun and the other 7 were stifled. This force was too powerful. Spiritual infant tier experts were actually in the hundreds. Placed in the North region, were all the spiritual infant tier warriors added up even near this amount? The Thousand Corpse sect proved to be an ancient large sect, even just rising from the ashes, it had reached such a scale. So what? Ao family's elder rolled his eyes. North region's strongest elite is only the spiritual infant tier, and spiritual infant tier experts that cross over the region wall will have their cultivation, and even their life force, cut. Thousand Corpse sect's base should be in middle state, so why don't you request a deity transformation tier elite comes over? Our sect will unite the vast lands sooner or later, and when the time comes, if you guys don't want to become corpse soldiers, you'll have to live at our mercy. Elder Tian Che said loftily. A mere region wall, you think our sect's elites can't break through it? Shi Shun and the other 7 were all shocked. Right, how did the region wall come about? At most, it was the handiwork of a shattering void tier elite, and since that was so, how could it block another shattering void tier elite? Those who comply with us will thrive, and those who resist us will perish, the skinny and dark old man and Elder Tian Che shouted at the same time. Bullsh. Ao family's elder shouted angrily. Evil never prevails over good. If your sect master dares to take rash actions, would Middle States Heaven's Sword sect and Cloud Phoenix sect not intervene to stop you guys? Stop with the nonsense, either get lost or die. The other 7 spiritual infant tier warriors also looked cold. They were truly so awe-inspiringly righteous, but the thing on Ling Han was too precious, and they couldn't not contest for it. If it were simply an ordinary figure, they'd probably break into a quarrel with the Thousand Corpse sect. The Thousand Corpse sect was certainly loathed by everyone, but the key was that 2 people here weren't rats, they were large old tigers, and striking them could harm one's own bones, so who would be willing to start a fight? Elder Tian Che and the skinny and dark old man snorted, hallooing. As a ceaseless ear-piercing sounded, 4 caskets slid over from afar. Terrifying corpse chi filled the air, and could be felt from very far away. These 2 people planned to ambush Ling Han, so they obviously couldn't bring corpse soldiers, which would be too evident. Peng, 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 4 corpse sodders leapt out from the caskets. Their faces were clearly frightening, but a layer of light gold covered their bodies, having a sense of holiness that astonished people. First-tier gold-armored corpse, equivalent to the spiritual infant tier. There certainly was a reason why the Thousand Corpse sect was feared by people. Corpse soldiers didn't fear death, ignored pain, and had astonishing defensive power. And the higher the tier Thousand Corpse sect's disciples were at, the more corpse soldiers they could bring. There were clearly only 2 spiritual infant tier elites here, but they possessed the battle prowess of 6 spiritual infant tiers. And how about now? Elder Tian Che said loftily. Shi Shun and the other 7 frowned. 8 against 6, they still had a firm advantage, but the problem was that even if they could win, they would have to pay a great price. Mph, everyone's target is that kid, why not wait for him to appear and kill him together? When the time comes, everyone can seize the treasure, Shi Shun said. That's settled then. The 2 spiritual infant tier experts of the Thousand Corpse sect weren't willing to start a fight. After all, they were at a disadvantage in numbers. Once the 2 parties agreed, they withdrew their hostility, and waited quietly for Ling Han to appear. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han sighed. With the attack earlier, the speck that Black Tower turned into also moved with the wind, floating to a distant place. Otherwise, if he threw out the god's skeletal remains, it would definitely be able to suppress the 10 spiritual infant tiers onto all 4s. However, would that be effective against the corpse soldiers? Ling Han didn't know. Corpse soldiers were already dead, equivalent to puppets. This thing's never been said to been able to be suppressed by any presence. What to do? Endure till they lose patience and disperse voluntarily? Ling Han immediately shook his head. These people might go search for Ling Dongxing. He decided to break through to the Flower Blossom tier as soon as possible, and then beat these bastards with Black Tower's power boost. He was extremely resolute and immediately set aside all thoughts, cultivating wholeheartedly. He was originally at the middle stage of the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, so after 10 days of cultivation, he reached peak stage. Inside his Dantian, the spiritual ocean was vast and mighty. 2 spiritual pedestals rose from within it, infinitely high and extremely magnificent. It'd be best to use a few months to perfect the tier and break through after there can be no more improvements. However, there isn't so much time now. I must immediately begin charging at the Flower Blossom tier. Ling Han said. Hong, long, long, the bones in his body crackled, as if the chants of Tao. Liu Yu Tong and the others sat cross-legged nearby, as this was of great benefit to them as well. Chapter 512, Spiritual Pedestal Births Tao Flower. Chapter 512, Spiritual Pedestal Births Tao Flower. Reverie _ Crossing into the flower blossom tier from the spiritual pedestal tier was a qualitative change. On the spiritual pedestal, a martial arts celestial flower would bloom, and one would transcend the mortal limit from then on. Why could flower blossom tier warriors allocate the spirit chi of heaven and earth to add to their attacks? It was because of the martial arts celestial flower that could draw the spirit chi of heaven and earth, as if a spirit base. However, the spirit base absorbed spirit chi to convert it into one's own origin power, but the martial arts celestial flower directly added to the attack. But how did one produce a martial arts celestial flower? Plant the martial arts celestial flower seed on the spiritual pedestal and wait for it to bud and grow into a celestial flower. One would then be a flower blossom tier expert. However, the first step wasn't to plant the seed, but to select the kind of a martial arts seed. Planting one martial arts seed, I can thereby blossom a celestial flower and cross into the flower blossom tier. In the former life, I planted a spiritual seed of fire, and after the celestial flower blossomed, I could invoke the fire spiritual chi within heaven and earth. However, it said that some can plant down 3 martial arts seeds, and blossom 3 celestial flowers in the end, being called 3 flowers crown. I possess a 5-element spirit base, why not try planting 5 seedlings? Martial arts seeds can only be planted at peak stage of the spiritual pedestal tier, so I must make a decision. No need to consider. I walk the path of the strongest, so I'll plant 5 martial arts seeds. Ling Han's expression was resolute as he began to extract from the 5 elements Chaos Lotus's source. This spirit base corresponded to the elements gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, so with these as seeds, the martial arts celestial flower he blossomed could also possess 5 different elements. At that time, he would be able to draw from 5 types of spiritual chi in an attack, and that attack power would obviously be formidable. However, stripping from the spirit base's source element was painful, like being cut by a saber, and made his expression twist involuntarily, revealing an intensely pained expression. Liu Yutong and the other girl's heart ached, especially Yu Hongchang's. Her son was flesh that fell from her own body, making her tears almost fall out. Liu Yutong and Li Sai-chan grabbed onto her hands on each side, calming her slightly. Extracting the source element of a spirit base, this process was extremely painful, but not dangerous. Ling Han did it once in his previous life, but he had a fire spirit base back then, and only needed to extract it once to finish. Now, it was 5 times. Fortunately, this process was finally completed anyway. Having removed the source elements, the 5 elements Chaos Lotus seemed dispirited and inert, somewhat hurt at the core, but it only needed some time to rest and could still recuperate. Also, since Ling Han was also a heaven-grade alchemist, would he still fear a damaged spirit base? Ling Han began to plant the spirit seeds, but there were only 5 and they couldn't be broken up into parts. He considered it momentarily and decided to care for the Earth spiritual ocean's spiritual pedestal. As for the other half, that would be for later. Spiritual pedestals were the best soil for spirit seeds. After burying the spirit seed, to let the spirit seed bud and blossom a celestial flower, massive amounts of energy needed to be provided, as well as corresponding martial arts comprehension. These 2 things were the fertilizer to grow the spirit seed, neither could be missing. Ling Han began to chug down spirit medicine and spiritual liquid. As for marital arts comprehension, this he wasn't missing. Even if he planted 5 seeds this time, he was still much at ease, having enough comprehension to aid him back to the heaven tier. When the martial arts seed would bud, how long it would grow, and what celestial flower would bloom, these were all uncertain. Depending on whether there was enough fertilizer, it would be possible to succeed in 1 to 2 days, but if there weren't enough fertilizer, it might be several years, several tens of years, or hundreds of years. There wouldn't be over hundreds of years, since lifespan was a mere 100 years. If one didn't enter the flower blossom tier, one would already be dead. Ling Han of course had enough fertilizer. Although there weren't medicinal pills that could make one directly cross into the flower blossom tier, there were too many tonic things, and he didn't wish to cross into it directly. Advancing into the flower blossom tier was to comprehend the Tao of heaven and earth, which was of great benefit, so why miss it? He kept eating, and the 5 spirit seeds soon budded, breaking through the mud and swaying on the spiritual pedestal. The strange thing was that on top of the spiritual pedestal in the heaven spiritual ocean, 5 spirit seeds also budded. What happened? He'd clearly only planted 5 spirit seed. But this was a good thing, wasn't it? Ling Han didn't have time to care now, simply nurturing the 5 spirit seeds diligently. As they kept growing, the spirit seeds were covered with vein-like patterns. Shining resplendent lithis was Ling Han's comprehension of martial arts. The spirit seeds grew very fast, and only after a day's effort grew into a firmament tree with a flower bud on top. The celestial flower's blossoming was imminent. Once the celestial flower blossomed, Ling Han would officially advance into the flower blossom tier. Now, well, he was the same as when he'd planted the seed, only at half-step flower blossom tier. Ling Han sat cross-legged. This was the most arduous step and needed the provision of terrifying amounts of energy. On the contrary, martial intent had already densely covered the celestial flower, divine patterns intertwining. It was enough. Eat. Eat. Ling Han devoured ravenously like his life depended on it. A Tao fire rose within his body, burning his body and nourishing it ceaselessly with energy. Damn, how come that much energy still isn't enough? He cried out inwardly. When he'd broken through to the flower blossom tier in the past, he used at most 1/100th of that energy, but now it was 100 times more, as if filling in a bottomless pit with no sign of it being enough. He came to a realization. This was because he cultivated indestructible heaven's scroll. His physique's toughness was equivalent to rare metals of the same tier, and the problem was with same tier. Since he wanted to advance into the flower blossom tier, his physique obviously had to increase to the hardness of a 6th tier rare metal, but this couldn't possibly appear out of thin air. He obviously had to absorb sufficient amounts of energy to increase his physique. Could this not require massive amounts of energy? Ling Han was now equivalent to a human-shaped spirit tool, an increase from 5th tier spirit tool to a 6th tier one. Was this change not great? Then continue eating. Ling Han turned into Hu Niu, the Chowhound. Liu Yutong and the others stared with eyes wide open. Are you breaking through or turning into a hungry ghost's reincarnation? Even Hu Niu was somewhat shocked, muttering, seems to eat more than Niu, as expected of Niu's Ling Han. He ate for 2 days and 2 nights, finally filling this hole. 5 flower buds trembled lightly, as they'd blossom at any time. On the Heaven Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal, the 5 celestial flowers were also the same. It was like a mirror. The changes of the Earth Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal would be replicated on the Heaven Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal, appearing extremely miraculous. Thankfully that was so. Ling Han didn't have any spare spirit seeds to let 2 spiritual pedestals blossom celestial flowers simultaneously. Slowly, the celestial flower blossomed. Dang, 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 the sound of Tao resonated within the Black Tower, thought-provoking. Liu Yutong and the others, regardless of each person's cultivation, all entered into a state of enlightenment. Observing someone's breakthrough, especially to the flower blossom tier, a great threshold of surpassing mortals, had many great benefits. Of course, Ling Han was definitely the one with the greatest changes. On the Earth Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal, the 5 martial arts celestial flowers blossomed one by one. An azure flower represented wood, a red flower represented fire, a white flower represented gold, a black flower represented water, and a gold flower represented earth. The flower of 5 elements blossomed all together. The flower blossom tier. Chapter 513, Entrapping Spiritual Infant Tears. Chapter 513, Entrapping Spiritual Infant Tears. Reverie _ Heaven Spiritual Ocean's spiritual pedestal also blossomed 5-colored celestial flowers. They swayed slightly even though there was no wind, emitting a presence that transcended mortals. Ling Han opened his eyes abruptly. He finally returned to the flower blossom tier, an important point. In some sense, this represented that he took the first step in returning to the pinnacle. Young Master Han. Everyone was roused, approaching one after another. Son, were you in pain? Yu Hongchang pulled on Ling Han's arm and looked at him from top to bottom. Despite seeing Ling Han's pained expression earlier, she couldn't come up to ask and kept being concerned. No, all is smooth going, Ling Han said with a smile. Congrats, young Master Han. Zhu Wuju and Guang Yuan stood behind by a lot. They obviously didn't dare to contend with these women, But they were also very moved. It had only been so long, and an 18-year-old youngster had already become a super elite of the flower blossom tier. Placed in the desolate north, that was definitely an invincible existence. Linghan nodded and said, "Wait for me, take care of some trash first, and we'll drink later tonight." With that said, he stepped out of the Black Tower. Boy! Elder Tian Che and the dark and skinny old man assaulted him right away. Behind them were 4 corpse soldiers that emitted a golden sheen, but the 8 spiritual infant tier elites from the Winter Moon sect chose to sit by and watch. Apparently, they had qualms about the god's corpse in Linghan's hands, and without seeing Linghan use it, they definitely didn't dare to charge forward. That was simply giving away their lives. How unfortunate, he originally wanted to entrap a bit more people. When Elder Tian Che and the other old man were close, Linghan raised his hand, and a god's skeletal remains were unleashed. This old fellow brother probably died for countless of years and wouldn't mind being tossed about repeatedly like this. "Old brother, I'll definitely give you a grand burial in the future," Linghan said inwardly. Pa, 2 great 1,000 corpse sect elders immediately dropped to the ground. Under the suppression of a god's presences, they couldn't resist at all. However, the 4 corpse soldiers were not a bit affected. They were without consciousness to begin with, so how could they be suppressed by a god's presence? 4 gold-armored corpses were spiritual infant tier existences. How terrifying were they? Linghan didn't use Black Tower's power boost immediately, and instead activated the Thunder Battle Armor. Instantly, a flash of lightning spread open and formed a lightning barrier around him. He immediately retreated. He wasn't so crazy as to fight 4 spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers head-on. Flashes of memories revived in his mind, while Linghan's feet began to move naturally. Demon Fairy Step. This was a heaven tier movement art. It could only be used after advancing into the flower blossom tier, not belonging to mortals. In his previous life, he specialized in cultivating the Demon Fairy Step, using it even at the heaven tier. A feeling of nostalgia welled up, and Linghan couldn't help but feel bold and courageous. Wandering with ease through the attacks of 4 great spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers, could a high-level heaven-grade movement art not be swift? North region's martial arts level was low. Even the strongest sects like the Winter Moon sect and the Beast Emperor sect had arts that were only medium-level earth-grade. Their skills were also the same, being at most high-level earth-grade. Could these things be compared to a heaven-grade skill? Corpse soldiers' greatest forte was their tolerance in taking punishment, not fearing death nor pain, but they only relied on their instincts in battle. If they could use arts and skills like when they were alive, then that would truly be against reason. So how could such attacks possibly deal with Linghan, who used the Demon Fairy Step? Could this be the legacy that the brat acquired from the 12 palaces? It's truly amazing to wander easily surrounded by the attacks of 4 corpse soldiers and only be swept occasionally by the dispersing energy, but the battle armor he wears is enough to block it. Why does this battle armor looks like the Thunder Battle Armor? No way, the Thunder Battle Armor can't be revitalized, and wasn't it in one of our disciples' hands, called Han something? Han Lin. Hiss. Winter Moon sect's 8 spiritual infant tier warriors gasped in astonishment. Simultaneously wasn't Han Lin read backwards Linghan? They were actually deceived by Linghan, swindled of a treasure from their Winter Moon sect. The power of this Thunder Battle Armor worn on Linghan could even block the after effects of a spiritual infant tier's power. How valuable was it? "We have to get it back," the 8 people said all together, their eyes burning with desire. Under the attacks of 4 corpse soldiers, that boy is unknowingly moving further away from the terrifying corpse bones. Great, once he's slightly further away, we'll take the chance to attack. Alright, we have to kill him in one strike this time. The 8 people observed and waited for the opportunity. Linghan seemed to be kindled by the fight and forgot that there were still 8 spiritual infant tier elites ambushing him, but this was understandable. He was being attacked by 4 spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers, so how could he have the room to look left and right? He kept retreating, further and further away from the god's corpse. Now, Ao family's elder and the others dashed out. Linghan had now escaped from the god's corpse's range of influence, and it was the best chance to attack. Xiao, 5 in the front, 3 in the back, they started attacking one after another. "I was waiting for you guys. Ling Han sneered. He had a heaven-tier divine sense, so how could he possibly have neglected these old bastards? This was the battle strategy he drew up, moving further away from the god's corpse to lure these old bastards out. Hearing those words, Ao family's elder and the other 7 felt their hearts palpitate as an uneasy feeling welled up inside them without any obvious reason. This was an instinctive reaction, and after getting to the spiritual infant tier, they trusted their instincts the most. Thus, they immediately halted, wanting to turn to retreat. Too late. Ling Han raised his right hand and another god's corpse was thrown out. Wang, a terrifying presence swirled by, and the 5 spiritual infant tier cultivators that charged in front immediately fell to the ground, while the other 3 staggered. They still escaped the divine presence's area of influence. After all, they were far and weren't influenced much. What a pity, Ling Han cried out inwardly. Still, Ao family's elder and Shi Shun were amongst the 5 people who fell to the ground, making him very pleased. These were the people he definitely had to kill. He shifted on his feet with the demon birth sword already unleashed, attacking towards Shi Shun. Don't you dare. Afar, the 3 spiritual infant tier elites stamped their feet hastily. The Winter Moon sect had a total of 9 spiritual infant tier elites. If 5 were to die here, their strength would decrease sharply by half, almost dropping out of the 4 strongest forces. What don't I dare to do? Ling Han coldly, slicing with his sword. Shi Shun's head was cut off and blood instantly surged out violently. A dignified spiritual infant tier elite, one among the strongest beings of the North region, actually died in such a stupid way, dying without being able to execute any arts and lying on the ground like a dead dog to be slaughtered as one pleased. How different were they then from an insignificant soldier? Shi Shun's eyes were wide open, his face ashen, knowing he was about to die. It was full of grievance. Chapter 514 Ending Karma. Chapter 514 Ending Karma. Reverie _ Ling Han pushed on. With 4 gold-armored corps chasing him, if he let them attack as they pleased, the thunder battle armor probably wouldn't save him. After all, how could spiritual infant tier beings be underestimated? Ao family's elder revealed a panic-stricken expression. He didn't want to die and wanted even less to die in the hands of a small figure. Ling Han sneered and said, "I'm a heaven-grade alchemist. Me killing you personally, is that not enough for you to boast about?" The sword swept by and the Ao family's elder was beheaded, passing away. He leapt repeatedly, reaping all 5 spiritual infant tier warriors' lives, then killed the 2 people from the 1,000 corpse sect at the end. Under the suppression of the god's corpse, these people didn't even have the strength to beg for mercy and could only await death, dying extremely resentfully. Spiritual infant tier elites, beings that should be invincible in the North region. Even if they couldn't win, they could leave leisurely. Spiritual infant tier elites wanting to kill spiritual infant tier elites? Hard. But now, they were like wheat, easily reaped. Once Elder Tian Che and the skinny dark elder died, the 4 gold-armored corpses immediately escaped control. They no longer focused on Ling Han, and instead were filled with killing intent towards any being with flesh, craving to devour blood and flesh. This was the instinct of corpse soldiers. Ling Han sighed. Once the god corpse was out, he could easily control the situation, but it was ineffective towards the 4 already dead corpse soldiers. He originally could not use Black Tower's power boost, but with the cultivation of only flower blossom tier, how could he possibly stop these 4 corpse soldiers going on a mass killing spree? Spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers had extremely tough physiques and could only be killed by many spiritual infant tier elites at least. If they were released in the desolate north, people would be definitely plunged into misery and suffering. "I can't bear the burden of this karma," Ling Han said faintly. Small tower. Hong, small tower immediately primed Black Tower, pouring ceaseless energy towards him and making his cultivation skyrocket. The first layer of the spiritual infant tier. Winter Moon sect's remaining 3 old monsters of the spiritual infant tier almost stared their eyeballs out. They originally thought that Ling Han's flower blossom tier cultivation was a state after taking pills, and he was nothing more than a spiritual pedestal tier youngster. However, Ling Han's cultivation rocketed to the spiritual infant tier all of a sudden. They finally realized that Ling Han had actually advanced into the flower blossom tier. This youngster was too terrifying. Ling Han temporarily didn't pay attention to those 3 people. The 4 corpse soldiers had to be demolished. This scourge was too great. As the demon birth sword was raised, Ling Han executed mysterious 3,000. 4,000 sword lights waved. Inside Ling Han's dantian, 10 martial arts celestial flowers undulated slightly, drawing heaven and earth spirit chi to add to the might of the sword lights. Hong, the sword art's power instantly grew drastically by 100-fold. This was too terrifying. Pu, 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 as sword lights swept by, a gold-armored corpse was directly slashed into pieces. A 10th-tier spirit tool coupled with the mysterious 3,000, and the boost of 10 celestial flowers, resulted in this surprising effect. Even the gold-armored corpse was almost instantly killed. Winter Moon Sect's 3 old monsters looked at each other, seeing extreme fear on each other's faces. Without demur, they scrammed. This youngster was too strong to the point that they couldn't even have the courage to fight him anymore. Better return back to the sect where there was the protection of the mountain protecting formation, which was at the deity transformation tier level. Wait another 100 years or so's the Winter Moon sect had deep roots, they'd recover from the day's casualties. Ling Han didn't chase. He only wanted to kill Ao family's elder and Shi Shun, and once these 2 people died, he didn't really care to kill the others. After he recovered slightly, he fired mysterious 3,000 again, slaying another corpse soldier. If they were martial artists, they'd definitely run if they saw 2 companions killed, but Vorp's soldiers didn't fear death, they only had the instinct of devouring flesh and blood. Since Ling Han was a living spirit, not to mention whether he was only at the spiritual infant or the flower blossom tier, the corpses would still charge up even if he were at the shattering void or heaven tier. In a little over 10 minutes, the 4 gold-armored corpses were all annihilated by Ling Han. After Ling Han caught his breath, he stored the 2 god-tier corpses into the Black Tower. The god-tier oppression decreased a little every time it was used, and whether it could suppress spiritual infant tier elites next time was uncertain. He summoned everyone out from the Black Tower and walked towards the fallen moon gorge. Yu Hongchang couldn't help but be excited. Back then, when she and Ling Dongxing came here, they were caught up with by Ao Feng. Then, she was separated with her husband and son. In a flash, 18 years had gone by. Liu Yutong and Li Sai Chan hurriedly supported her from the left and right, as if treating her like a normal 70 to 8-year-old lady. Seeing this, Ling Han shook his head. Ling Han swept the battlefield and stored the spatial rings of the 7 spiritual infant tier cultivators into the Black Tower. Inside the rings were mostly origin crystals. Some were 4 stars. There were also some arts and skills, but none of them qualified for Ling Han to skim through them. The best was medium-level Earth-grade trash. They entered the Fallen Moon Gorge and arrived at the Star Brilliance Palace Hall. Informed that a heaven-grade alchemist arrived, all alchemists came greeting on their knees. Even Yonglong Zhong and the other 2 Earth-grade alchemists were no exception, extremely devout as they lay prostrated on the ground. Ling Han helped up the 3 old men one by one and said with a smile, "I already refined the Restore Spirit pill, but I'll refine another medium-level Earth-grade medicinal pill later. All of you come observe." "Thank you, Master Ling." The 3 old men were extremely touched. Having become a heaven-tier alchemist, Ling Han didn't need to care about how they felt, but he still did, making them feel extremely touched and warm inside the hearts. Ling Han only stayed at the Star Brilliance Palace Hall for a day. After he finished refining the pill, he set out for Rain Country. He was in a hurry to let his parents reunite, and wanted even more to see how Ling Dongxing's current situation was. In order to hasten on the journey, he stored everyone inside the Black Tower and used the Demon Fairy Step, dashing towards Da Yuan City. After only 3 days, he arrived at Da Yuan City. He summoned everyone from the Black Tower again. Ling Han first went to see Da Yuan King. "Master Ling." Seeing Ling Han, Da Yuan King hurriedly cupped his hands in obeisance. This was a high-level black-grade alchemist, whose status was higher than his. He clearly didn't know that Ling Han not only became a heaven-grade alchemist, but also far surpassed him in martial arts, advancing into the flower blossom tier. Ling Han naturally didn't bring out his identity to pressure him. In reality, the status of a high-level black-grade alchemist was great enough here. If he truly said he were a heaven-grade alchemist and a flower blossom tier elite, Da Yuan King would properly slump onto the ground in fear. He laughed and said, Da Yuan King, haven't seen you for a year. How's everything? Thanks to Master, all is well, Da Yuan King said with a smile. No kidding, the new Rain Emperor cared greatly for the Ling family, and even brought Da Yuan King Manner's status up with them. Ling Han nodded and said, how's my father? A few days ago, several foreigners came to investigate the whereabouts of your father, so I acted on my own and moved your father and the Ling family to a new place, Da Yuan King replied. Very good. Ling Han pat him on the shoulder, then reached out and spread his hands over the table as several bottles of medicinal pills instantly appeared. Da Yuan King, I'm in a rush to see my father. Accept these things, I'll be going now. Chapter 515, Parents Reunite. Chapter 515, Parents Reunite. Reverie _ Da Yuan King obviously expressed his thanks, and hurriedly told Ling Han where the Ling family currently lived. He assumed that Ling Han was still a high-level black-grade alchemist and the medicinal pills he gifted were definitely remarkable. However, when Ling Han left, he picked up the medicinal pills to examine them, and was shocked to the point of almost slumping onto the ground. My goodness! Every single one was of earth grade, and each bottle had the effects and taboos clearly written on it, making Da Yuan King tremble all over. He had hoped to cross into the spiritual pedestal tier and now he definitely could. He couldn't help but be overcome with emotion. Looking after the Ling family was as simple as the lift of a hand, but it now was exchanged into such substantial rewards. Master Ling, a great person. Master Ling didn't seem to care at all. Earth-grade medicinal pills were too normal for him, he was refining them off-handedly. After he requited the favor, he immediately went to find his mother and the others, leaving Da Yuan City. Heading west, they arrived at a small, remote town. Ling Dongxing and the others lived here. The closer they got, the more nervous Yu Hongchang was. She kept touching the corners of her eyes and hair, worried if she got a lot older, and whether Ling Dongxing would recognize her at first sight, feeling both excited and complicated. After they entered the town, they arrived at a large courtyard with its doors closed. Ling Han went up to knock, and in a short while, a voice came from inside. Whom are you looking for? I'm Ling Han. A thump instantly sounded from inside. Apparently, that person tripped. The door then opened as a middle-aged man shouted to Ling Han in surprise, Young Master Han, you've returned. He was Ling family's servant. Previously, when the Cheng family almost destroyed the Ling family, he escaped, and later still worked at the Ling family, loyal and devoted. Ling Han revealed a smile and said, I'm back. Where's father? The old master is in the drawing room receiving guests, that servant said. What guests? Ling Han asked without thinking. A matchmaker that's talking to the old master about a marriage, the servant said. Yu Hongchang was originally nervous, but as she heard that, she blew up, stepping forward quickly to ask, Oh, your old master is taking a wife. That servant didn't recognize Yu Hongchang, but since she was with Ling Han, he naturally didn't dare to be negligent and said, The old master already lost his wife for many years, and we servants hope that the old master can remarry, having someone as company. That's great, I sure want to see it. Yu Hongchan's face turned cold. Taking large strides right through the garden, she started walking towards the drawing room. The servant wanted to stop her. You're a guest and can't act recklessly, okay? Ling Han hurriedly held him back and said smilingly, Uncle Fu, you'd better pray for yourself. Young Master Han, what do you mean? Uncle Fu was puzzled. That's my mother, Ling Han said with a smile. Uncle Fu was startled. He thought with doubt, wasn't young Master Han's mother the old master's wife? But didn't the mistress die long ago? Oh my, could she not have died? He was immediately freaked out, said that the old master remarry in front of the mistress. If the mistress held a grudge against him in the future, wouldn't that be terrible? Ling Han laughed loudly and patted him on the shoulder. It's nothing, it's nothing. Don't worry. Young Master Han, don't give me a hard time like that, not telling me right away, Uncle Fu said with a bitter face. It'd be strange if a grudge wasn't held against him. Yu Hongchang obviously wasn't such a person, and Ling Han was only joking with Uncle Fu. Where would one get such a loyal and devout servant? He, Liu Yutong, and the others didn't enter. After a short while, a 40-year-old woman ran out with a palm print on her face. From the size of it, it definitely was Yu Hongchang who did it. This matchmaker lady probably spoke without much thought inappropriately, angering Yu Hongchang. However, only giving her a slap and not breaking her head, Yu Hongchang's character and conduct could be seen. An indistinct cry sounded from the drawing room. Ling Han pondered and said, "Find a place to stay first. My father and my mother probably have no time for us today." "Why?" Hu Niu asked, tilting her head. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, "They're busy being intimate." Liu Yutong and the other girls blushed, while Hu Niu held onto Ling Han's neck and said in a sweet voice, "Ling Han, be intimate with Niu." Ling Han instantly retreated in defeat. As expected, only in the afternoon of the second day did Ling Dongxin finally have time to call in Ling Han. Yu Hongchang snuggled up by the former's side, without a bit of the previous day's lioness look. As the father and son met, they obviously hugged each other tightly, shedding a few manly tears. The family spoke for a while, and naturally conversed about martial arts. According to Yu Hongchang's wish, there was no need for revenge. Living happily as a family was better than anything else. However, Ling Han and Ling Dongxing desired revenge, and wouldn't possibly let go of the enmity with Ao Feng. Ling Han specially only incapacitated Ao Feng's spirit base, just so that Ling Dongxing could personally kill him. "Father, your spirit base has recovered now, right?" Ling Han asked. "It's recovered." Ling Dongxing's was in high spirits. He not only recovered his spirit base, but also touched the threshold of crossing into the gushing spring tier and would break through soon. "Oh, right. The alchemist you asked to come is still staying here." Oh, Liu Jitong was actually still living here, no wonder he wasn't to be seen at the North Pill Pavilion. Ling Han nodded, and said, "I incapacitated Ao Feng's spirit base, and killed Ao family's elder. Father, you only have to cross into the flower blossom tier before you can personally take revenge." Ling Dongxing was shocked. Ao family's elder, a spiritual infant tier being, was actually killed by his son? But how could Ling Han possibly lie to him? He couldn't help but laugh loudly. This son was too accomplished, making him extremely joyful. Ling Han and Ling Dongxing discussed their following plans. The news that Ling Han received the coordinates to a god's treasure trove soon spread throughout the entire world, and there were definitely countless people in the dark that wanted to murder him for gain. Ling Dongxing and the others would become his Achilles' heel, and there would definitely be lots of forces that wanted to capture them to threaten Ling Han. Thus, they planned to move and conceal their names for a time. Ling Han also planned to use this time to increase his father's strength and accumulate his own cultivation. From the spiritual pedestal tier to the flower blossom tier, he rushed it too much, and had to stabilize his base so as to avoid severe problems in the future. Yu Hongchang obviously had no suggestions. It was enough for her that the family was reunited. Her demands were extremely simple. Move. Ling Han stored everyone into the Black Tower. This way, they would be untraceable. After leaving a letter for Da Yuan King, Ling Han treaded through the air, leaving Rain Country. After hesitating slightly, he chose to head towards Fire Country. Crossing a range of mountains and rivers, Ling Han appeared at a small town at Fire Country's border. It was interlocked with Wind Country's territory. This Baoyang town was an unregulated area, shockingly poor and a place beyond the law. Nobody would find it strange if new faces appeared here. People hoed their own potatoes and wouldn't meddle in other people's business. Ling Han bought a large courtyard and let everyone out. This courtyard was truly large and came with an extremely large vegetable garden. If they raised some poultry, they could be almost self-sufficient. Chapter 516, Net of Affection. Chapter 516, Net of Affection. Reverie _ At first, there was obviously no supply of food in the mansion, but Ling Han had the Black Tower, where there was plenty of ingredients. When he left in the future, the vegetable garden would have grown, and no one in the outside would know exactly how many people lived here. Everyone lived in seclusion. In reality, The desolate north had nothing much to show as it was too poorly developed. Everyone immersed themselves in cultivation. Ling Dongxin wasted 18 years, and now that his spirit base was recovered, there would naturally be a rebound period. In addition to Ling Han's not stinting continuous provision spiritual medicines, beast meat, and spiritual liquid, his cultivation progress speed could only be described as crazy. Ling Han planned to stay here for half a year, then find Yin Hong at Extreme Young City, attending the Spirit Treasures Pavilion's whatever contest together. He would just disguise himself a little at that time anyway. If Yin Hong sold him out, he would just see it as his error in judgment of her, but he wouldn't have to worry about any life-threatening dangers. This matter was something he promised, and he definitely would keep his word. Liu Yutong and the others progressed slowly at first because they had just broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier. The explosive period had passed and would naturally transform into a stable period. Besides, a continuous explosive growth would actually not have any benefits to martial arts cultivation. After a peaceful life of a dozen days, Yu Hongchang was discontented. What was with her son's situation? There were obviously 3 exquisite girls and you just look at them like that. What a waste and shame. The old lady ordered that Ling Han had to take time every day to spend with the girls. That was his mother, so Ling Han could only follow the orders. The first was Liu Yutong. The two left the mansion and strolled outside the small town. The gentle breeze swept by, and she was like a jade in the setting sun as the evening glow fell on Liu Yutong's face that reflected a fiery red brilliance, making for an extremely touching sight. Ayo! Liu Yutong suddenly staggered and fell towards the ground. Ling Han hurriedly reached out to hold her. What happened? He asked. Liu Yutong leaned on his body and said in a low and somewhat quivering voice, I twisted my ankle. Twisted her ankle? A dignified spiritual pedestal tier expert would twist her ankle while walking? Ling Han immediately guessed. She was just pretending. But, did he have the nerve to expose her? The hardest thing to bear was a beauty's favor, so he could only pretend to be a fool. Then let's go back, he said. Yes. Liu Yutong nodded and leaned in Ling Han's embrace. Smelling the intense manliness that emitted from his body, she almost fainted, feeling like her mind was about to explode, and couldn't possibly have any other thoughts. With each step, she felt like walking amongst the clouds, without any weight at all. Her cheeks were getting redder and redder, more beautiful than ever. As they walked, she mustered up the courage and hugged Ling Han's waist, while her head leaned tightly onto Ling Han's chest. A sense of extreme happiness welled up inside, and she wanted to keep walking like this forever. But in the end, they still walked home. When Ling Han let her go, Liu Yutong was so embarrassed that she took to her heels, making Ling Han burst into laughter. Wasn't your ankle twisted? How could you still run so quick? This acting was way too unprofessional. On the second day, it was Li Sai-chan that he had to keep company. Oh hiya. As they walked, Li Sai-chan also tripped and fell. Well, her ankle was twisted too. You guys were taught by the same master, right? Ling Han assisted her back, thinking that this was definitely his mother's idea. Otherwise, these two women couldn't possibly be so shameless. Moreover, they already knew each other for 2 years, so how come they never twisted their ankles before and all did now? The third day, it was Zhu Xian. Ling Han sighed and said, you won't twist your ankle while walking too, right? There's got to be some originality. Can't always just twist your ankle, there's no sincerity in that at all. Zhu Xian was somewhat at a loss. How come this wasn't as planned? She was rather smart though. And her exquisite body softened, falling towards Ling Han. You couldn't possibly have the heart to let me fall onto the ground, right? Ling Han certainly didn't want to catch her, but thinking that if his mother found out, he'd get terribly scolded, he had to reach to protect this flower, embracing Zhu Xian. Instantly, a splendid sensation assaulted him, making his heart palpitate ceaselessly. This was a remarkably beautiful lady, who could touch the hearts of the prodigies in the middle state even with her face covered. It could be imagined how powerful her charm was. Ling Han instantly felt an uncontrollable urge. The longer he was in contact with Zhu Xian, the harder it was for him to fend against her charm. He was about to push Zhu Xian aside, but this exquisite beauty hugged onto him tightly. Her stunning body completely snugged closely, making him feel clearly just how alluring her physique was. "Brother Han," she said in a low and passionate voice. Ling Han almost had a nosebleed. A lady as beautiful as a celestial fairy leaned in his embrace and let out such a touching voice. If he didn't react at all, then he would be way too unmanly. "Xian'er knows that you have someone hidden in your heart, but Xian'er doesn't care. It would be enough as long as Brother Han leaves a place in his heart for Xian'er in the future," Zhu Xian'er said with a dreamlike voice. Ling Han's heart palpitated fiercely. Were there words of love more touching than these in the world? He certainly couldn't let go of heavenly divine phoenix maiden even after a millennium. He still thought that after she became a god, she could live all the way till now, and didn't consider the possibility that she could be in love with someone else. Under these conditions, he couldn't possibly get a second girl, and this was why he didn't have any strange thoughts all along despite interacting with Liu Yutong and Li Sai-chan for such a long time. However, Zhu Xian'er spread out a great net of tender passion, making him fall into it calmly and collectedly. "What a truly alluring woman." Ling Han embraced her and said, "You might have to wait for over 100 years. This wasn't exaggerated. It might be fast for him to return to the heaven tier, and from the heaven tier to the shattering void tier, then from the shattering void tier to the god tier. The time needed was uncertain. However, 100 years for that wasn't a long time. "Xian'er is willing to wait," Zhu Xian'er said in a tender voice. She would definitely cross into the flower blossom tier, and at least possess 300 years of life. Waiting for over 100 years was equivalent to being 30 years old. Moreover, following Ling Han and with her talents, the flower blossom tier definitely wasn't her limit. The spiritual infant tier, the deity transformation tier, and even the heaven tier and the shattering void were possible. Since even Zhu Xian'er was willing to wait, what other reason did Ling Han have to say no? If he dared, his mother would whip him. This would be how things will be then. Ling Han hugged the stunning beauty. Neither of them spoke as a light warmth dispersed between them. Zhu Xian'er was very smart, not asking who that person was in Ling Han's heart, not contesting nor comparing, simply fighting silently for a world that belonged to her. The atmosphere was cozy and sweet. "Brother Han, what's that thing hidden in your pants?" hard, and somewhat poking at Xian'er. After hugging for a while, Zhu Xian'er suddenly popped with such a question, and reached to touch it. "Ah." Chapter 517, Running into Old Friends in Foreign Land. Chapter 517, Running into Old Friends in Foreign Land. Reverie _ On the fourth day, Hunyo waited there. After Ling Han rolled his eyes, the little girl laughed loudly with her hands on her hips, dragging Ling Han for grilled meat. She had no consistency in doing things. A while ago, she said she would strive to cultivate, but after a few days, she began slacking off. What others couldn't accept was that her cultivation actually still increased so quickly. She broke through to the flower blossom tier without a sound, and her battle prowess was unpredictably strong. These days, he rested peacefully and forgot all pressure, simply enjoying his parents' affection and the tender sentiments of the young beauties. Ling Han, however, gained surprising improvements on martial arts. The sword chi he grasped reached 19 flashes, a period of explosive growth. But the 20th flash was another hurdle, which would probably have him stuck for a while. Moreover, he also finally grasped the 2 bone patterns, one acquired from the old vicious mongoose and the other from the unnameable beast king. The vicious mongoose's bone patterns were a supportive art, though even Ling Han didn't know whether it could be called an art per se. It was simply a spiritual pattern, but it could be attached onto a sword, greatly increasing the sword chi's destructive power. It had no offensive capacity at all in itself and could only be characterized as a supportive attribute. This was very practical, and Ling Han even felt that its effects surpassed the other bone patterns. The other was an art that could fire out a cold ice blade, but Ling Han already grasped the mystical power annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, which was relatively powerful as a long-distance attack. But thinking about it, annihilating Dragon Star Arrow needed accumulation for a certain amount of time before it could be fired, and it was actually an attack launched over extreme distances, while this cold ice blade was a medium to short-range attack, so it just so happened to be supplementary for it. Anyways, more techniques weren't a burden. Each art and skill might have a place where its uses could be displayed. Next, he was going to middle state, and the mysterious 3000 definitely couldn't be used recklessly there. Otherwise, if the old monsters of the Heaven's Sword sect were drawn out, it wouldn't be a laughing matter. Thus, he flipped through some skills and found a sword technique. The Desolate Hell Sword. Ling Han acquired it from an ancient site. It was said to be the legacy of a strange force called ancient monks. This set of sword techniques expiated men, beasts, and all people. It had a total of 8 styles. The first 7 styles were merciful, leaving one with a feeble thread of life, used mainly for defense, and only the last style was extremely ruthless, like becoming a demon. It was of course a heaven-grade skill, the only heaven-grade sword technique that Ling Han grasped. Thus, even though this sword technique was somewhat strange, Ling Han still decided to cultivate it. A heaven-grade skill was something where one had to grasp its intent during cultivation in order to connect with the martial intent and form a link between the preceding and following styles, fully unleashing the power of the technique. Thus, to fully grasp the Desolate Hell Sword, Ling Han needed to be compassionate for mankind when executing the first 7 styles, and at the last style, he had to turn into the Azura Demon King of Avicii, cutting down all things. He practiced the sword technique and contemplated the ancestor's state of mind when creating this sword technique, deepening his understanding of the way of the sword much more. However, cultivating someone else's technique, no matter how strong it is still using someone else's invention. Each person has their own path, and even if it's the same path of a king, a heartless path, it couldn't possibly be completely the same. So, to be the strongest, I must create a technique of my own. Like Rain Emperor, who created Son of Heaven fist technique, although it might not be the strongest fist technique, it was still the most suitable fist technique for Rain Emperor. As his tier increased, the fist technique's power would also increase, and at last reach expert mastery depending on the heights Rain Emperor could go. In this life, since I'm focused on the sword, I'll create a sword technique that belongs to my own sword path, and it'll increase as my tier increases. I had this thought before, but haven't ever put it into practice. Since I've now advanced into the Flower Blossom tier, it should be brought on the daily schedule. Ling Han cultivated the Desolate Hell Sword and deduced his sword path, accumulating his understanding in preparation for a day when a sudden enlightenment might bring him inspiration. It was not only him. After Liu Yutong and the others experienced a moderate period, they then started to leap forward again. Although it wasn't as exaggerated as in his case, it was still faster than most people. Ling Han obviously attended to Ling Dongxing the most. After only 3 months, Ling Dongxing crossed into the spiritual ocean tier. Such speed was truly terrifying. Blindly pursuing higher cultivation wasn't good, as it was somewhat like pulling seedlings to help them grow. It would hurt a martial artist's roots, influencing their future potential. However, Ling Han had no other way, since his father wasn't young, and if he didn't reach the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier to leave enough to charge at the Flower Blossom tier, then Ling Dongxing would only have a mere 100 years of life. Finally having parents in this life and having the confidence to become a god, Ling Han obviously didn't want his parents' happy reunion to last only a few dozen years, so he had to at least get his parents to cross into the Flower Blossom tier. After he became a god, having the time to find divine medicine to refine it into a divine pill, he would make his parents become gods in a single step. The interaction with the 3 girls was more harmonious by the day, and although they didn't have very intimate contact, their feelings deepened by the day. Contrarily, Zhu Xian'er didn't dare to let Ling Han hug her after that bulging bone, and even blushed after glancing at Ling Han's lower body, threateningly beautiful. That night, after Ling Han finished cultivating and rested on his bed, he soon let out a quiet breathing sound. Even if he crossed into the Flower Blossom tier and transcended mortals, sleep was still the fastest and the best way to recover physical fatigue. Even if he didn't sleep for half a month, he could still be full of energy, but he would nonetheless sleep on schedule every night. However, that night was somewhat unquiet. Ling Han opened his eyes abruptly, and discovered that the window moved a little as 2 people wielding swords wormed in. The moonlight was clear and distinct, reflecting the chilling glare on the blade. Thieves! Ling Han sneered inwardly. To steal from him, were they seeking death? Just as he was about to attack, he was startled. With his eyesight, he could clearly perceive things even in the dark night, so he naturally saw how these two people looked. He actually recognized these two thieves. He snorted intentionally and sat up on the bed. Shua, Shua, two swords were mounted on his neck, and a girl's voice sounded. Don't move, or else I'll take your life. Sister, don't frighten him. What if this guy's skittish and screams out loud in fright? Another girl's voice sounded. This scene was truly seemingly familiar. You shut up, the elder sister reprimanded. The younger sister snorted, still unconvinced. She was quite reasonable. Ling Han laughed, and said, Don't worry, my nerves are quite big. I won't scream. The sisters were startled. They had certainly seen people with big guts, but to this degree. It was truly rare. You're way too collected. Don't you know that two swords are mounted on your neck? Hong. At this time, a loud bang came from outside, and a powerful voice sounded. Those two inside, get the hell out. Chapter 518, Strange Mineshaft. Chapter 518, Strange Mineshaft. Reverie _ Ling Han sighed and said, Tell me, who you guys tried to assassinate and failed again, provoking others to hunt you guys down? How did you know we're assassins? The younger sister said, surprised. You guys still haven't recognized my voice. Ling Han was speechless. Were these sisters even fit to be called assassins? The younger sister hurriedly lit up the oil lamp, swaying it before Ling Han's face, and couldn't help but shout mommy as she pointed at Ling Han. She said, It's you. Why are you here? I've seen a ghost. These assassin sisters were obviously Liu Feng and Liu Yu who failed to assassinate Shu Kuxin and left with Yun Shuang. Thinking about it now, they were certainly from the Fire Country. But it was just too coincidental, bumping into them in a country so big. Ling Han laughed and said, No need to care about why I'm here. How do we take care of your matter? We have to trouble young Master Han again to hide us sisters, Liu Feng said with a smile. This youngster was so calm and collected, completely unlike a teen, making her feel an indescribable sense of safety. TSK, we don't even know whom you offended and ran to such a remote town for refuge, yet you still want to protect us? Liu Yu was as before uncomfortable without saying a few provoking words. Ling Han curled his lip and said, Well, I'm truly sorry, please go wherever you came from. Cheap, I was just saying. Do you really have to be so serious? Liu Yu pouted. Seriously, whom did you guys offend this time? Ling Han sighed. Liu Yu instantly looked self-satisfied, and said, We tried to assassinate Fire Country's significant minister, Naz Yang. What sort of weird name is that? Ling Han interjected. Naz Yang, a dirty man actually named such a sissy name. Liu Yu seemed to have found mutual understanding with him, her face filled with approval. That's right, like I said, this person's name is Terrible One. Liu Feng was speechless, and said, The name doesn't matter, the key is that Naz Yang suddenly appeared in the recent half a year and became Fire Emperor's most highly regarded. He bewitched Fire Emperor to mine an extremely strange mineshaft. Every time the workers returned from mining, they'd die suddenly on the second day. However, Fire Emperor didn't give up, and assembled manpower from all over the country, excavating that mineshaft. Whoever dared to disobey would be killed. Now, countless people in the country are frightened, so we're killing Naz Yang to exterminate an evil for the country. TSK, being assassins, you still get a feeling of nobility. Ling Han said with a smile. Don't you look down on us. We do have 3 no-kills. Liu Yu said proudly. Don't kill kids, don't kill the old, and don't kill those who do good. Ling Han nodded as he smiled, and said, And then what? You guys tried to assassinate Naz Yang and ended up failing and being chased for 10,000 miles. Liu Yu pouted, and said, Can't you estimate us a bit grander? Like, after we successfully assassinated him, then successfully broke away from the chasing soldiers? Hee. What does he mean? Liu Yu stuck her hands on her hips and appeared extremely discontent. Hong. A heavy sound came from the outside house was probably torn down. That voice from earlier sounded again. The Imperial Guard's handling affairs, we can react first and report later. If everyone in this town isn't at the town's east gate in 15 minutes, The rest will be killed. Ling Han nodded and said, looks like Naji Yang certainly is quite spoiled. An assassination attempt was made on him and he actually sortied the Imperial Guard to chase the culprit. There are 7 high-level spiritual ocean tier warriors chasing us. Thankfully we were quick-witted, running away quickly, Liu Yu said proudly. Young Master Han. Zhu Wuju's voice sounded from outside the door. Ling Han pondered, and said, dismiss and suitably teach those people a lesson, but no need to kill. Yes. Zhu Wuju accepted the orders and left. He was now at the 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier and refined the heavenly luck stone. His battle prowess rocketed to 11 stars, and he definitely belonged to the elite in the fire country. Ling Han, however, sighed. With this disturbance, looks like the Ling family had to move again. These sisters truly caused nothing but trouble for him. Hey, your little attendant can settle those Imperial Guards outside. Those are high-level spiritual ocean tier warriors, Liu Yu said in disbelief. Don't make a fuss. Ling Han pressed his hand in gesture and said thoughtlessly, how's Yun Shuang? Unbelievably good. She's a famous entertainer in the Imperial City. Everyone is honored to listen to Lady Shuang play a piece of music. Countless people want to marry her, Liu Yu said and looked wickedly at Ling Han, hoping to see a disappointed expression. How could Ling Han possibly care about Yun Shuang? He only recalled her after seeing these sisters and so asked thoughtlessly. In a short while, Zhu Wuju returned and spoke by the door, young Master Han, the matter's taken care of. Are there any other commands? Ling Han nodded and said, go rest. Yes. Only then did Zhu Wuju leave. The sisters' expressions were filled with shock. After a while, Liu Yu finally said, Hey, is your attendant bullshit-ting? Ling Han shrugged and said, can you still hear the dogs bark? Liu Yu was first startled, then finally reacted to Ling Han calling the Imperial Guards as dogs, giggling involuntarily, but immediately covered her small mouth with her hands, and said, I really can't hear them anymore. Liu Feng's expression was also filled with shock. Young Master Han, those are high-level spiritual ocean tier cultivators. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, the trouble's taken care of, you guys can leave now. May we never meet again. Sigh, encountering you guys is never a good thing. Pa, we aren't bearers of bad luck. Liu Yu's expression was full of annoyance, but immediately continued, since your attendant is so impressive, why not lend him to us for a few days and help us kill that Naji Yang? Ling Han sneered and said, you have the nerve to say such a thing. Being an assassin to your degree, that's truly embarrassing. TSK, we're exterminating evil for the people. Liu Yu grabbed onto Ling Han and said, since you're now in the fire country, and bumped into us as luck would have it, it means heaven's ordained so. You need to give it effort. Ling Han declined to comment, but it couldn't be denied that this matter was too coincidental. Of all the places the sisters could run, they ran into his place of seclusion. He stroked his chin. If Fire Emperor was bent on having his way, then no matter where the Ling family moved, they might suffer the imperial family's coercion to go dig those ores. Unless they left the fire country. However, what exactly were those mines that would make Fire Emperor act so crazily, personally destroying the basis of this country? Ling Han asked, do you guys know what mineshaft that is? We don't know. We only know that strange ores can be dug out every day and sent to the imperial family. Liu Feng shook her head. A shred of curiosity welled up in Ling Han. Chapter 519, Going to the Imperial City. Chapter 519, Going to the Imperial City. Reverie _ For a person like Ling Han, once his curiosity was piqued, it couldn't be stopped. He certainly thought it strange. Those who entered the mineshaft, whether or not they'd ever cultivated before or if their cultivation was high or low, would definitely die suddenly on the following day as long they entered, unless one never came out. What sort of power was this? And what effects did the excavated ores have that would make Fire Emperor place such great importance on them, not hesitating to force the citizens to die to excavate it for him? He decided to take a trip to the Imperial City. With his cultivation of the flower blossom tier and battle prowess of 13 stars, who in the entire rain country could pose a threat to him? Finding out that Ling Han was headed to the imperial city, the sisters obviously exulted. But Ling Han didn't bring that powerful subordinate. When only Hunyo followed, they were dumbfounded. What were you two going to do, sightseeing? Young Master Han, will you bring your precious subordinate? Liu Feng'er suggested. That's right, that's right. That's the imperial city, no shortage of the spiritual pedestal tier elites, and the royal family even has flower blossom tier elites keeping watch, enough to put you in your place within a second. Liu Yu said impetuously. Nyo can fight 10. Hunyo said, unconvinced. The sisters knew that Hunyo was somewhat freakish, but definitely didn't think that this little girl could compare with them, let alone a spiritual pedestal or flower blossom tier warrior. They urged Ling Han to bring Zhu Wuju along. I said no need, Ling Han said smilingly. With a snap, he said, let's go. The sisters were helpless and could only set out, believing that after Ling Han bumped into a nail, he would still return to bring Zhu Wuju. At the worst, it was just making one more trip. The four set out, hastening towards the imperial city. For Ling Han, this was only a small trip. Hence, he didn't bring Liu Yutong and the others, believing that the matter would be settled within a few days. After a few days, they arrived at the imperial city. Ling Han learned about Na Zhiyang. He was an extremely mysterious person, suddenly appearing half a year ago, then becoming Fire Emperor's favorite, managing the excavation of the mineshaft. Originally, no one took it to heart, but once the excavation began, problems arose. The miners would die suddenly the second day after coming out. After flipping through historic records, they discovered that the mineshaft actually had problems long ago, so it was sealed up, yet it was reopened with Na Zhiyang's suggestion. No one knew exactly what was produced inside the mineshafts, but crimson-red rocks were sent endlessly into the royal palace. Although large amounts of miners suddenly died every few days, drawing the repeated objections of the courtiers, Fire Emperor was bent on having his way. He definitely wouldn't seal the mineshaft, and instead assembled citizens all over the country to enter the mineshaft. First were convicts on death row, then normal convicts, and now those who were caught were sent right to the mineshaft. Those who didn't enter were executed on spot, making the people around the imperial city on edge, living in fear. This Na Zhiyang, who exactly is he, and what is he conspiring? Ling Han couldn't help but be curious, but he decided to first go see the mineshaft. Let's go, we'll bring you to see an old love first. Liu Yu grabbed onto Ling Han, bringing him to see Yun Shuang. Yun Shuang was born at Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and so she also walked the old path in Fire Country. She bought an elegant manor in the imperial city and would entertain some nobility, collecting a considerable entry fee. However, don't think of getting intimate with her. She only sold her art and not her body. Her status was rising steadily, and countless people were willing to spend a great amount of money to hear her play a musical piece, verifying an old saying, what could not be acquired was the best. Now, quite a few sons of nobility were going all out to marry this enchanting beauty, fighting openly and maneuvering covertly. All of them were generous, gifting a house today and gifting jewelry tomorrow. Yun Shuang's current possessions were definitely shocking. The four arrived at Yun Shuang's manor. It was built alongside a lake, the environment extremely graceful. Na Zhiyang might have made Fire Country on edge, but for high-level figures, their easy and comfortable lives weren't sent into disorder as they continued to lead a life of debauchery. No surprise, the rear long line was already in front of the manor's entrance. Shuang Yun's small manor didn't accept reservations. If you wanted to listen to Shuang sing, you had to come early to line up. However, Lady Shuang also had the habit of sleeping in and would open her doors to greet guests in the afternoon, stringing everyone along. Ling Han nodded. If Forget Not and Pill King Pavilion were handed to Yun Shuang for operation, maybe the business could still have been several times better. What are you guys doing? Line up. Know how to line up. Seeing Ling Han head straight for the entrance, everyone was in a bad mood. The sisters paid no heed and came to the entrance, taking out a black token and dangling it. The old servant at the entrance immediately let them in. Ling Han obviously held Hunyo's hand and followed inside. These made many people displeased and harbor suspicions. A young man entered Lady Shuang Shuang's manor, and a man with many women at that. What good could possibly happen? What a beast, even bringing such a small lady. Young Master Han. Shortly after Ling Han entered the manor, Yun Shuang Shuang walked over hastily. She was covered in thin clothing and her hair was disheveled. Evidently, she was sleeping, and after knowing Ling Han had come, she immediately ran out. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "Long time no see." Yun Shuang Shuang hurriedly nodded, stirred up with tears in her beautiful eyes. For her, Ling Han was her savior who helped her selflessly without seeking reciprocation, unlike other people who targeted her beauty. "Let's go." Hunyo shook Ling Han's hand, her jealousy was great as usual. Ling Han nodded, and said to Yun Shuang Shuang, "You're doing well, keep taking good care of yourself." Yun Shuang Shuang couldn't help but be disappointed and said, "Young Master Han won't stay for a while longer. I'm occupied." Ling Han said with a smile, looked at the sisters, and went on, "Regarding Naj Yang's matter, I have my own plan. You guys do whatever you need to do. Else, if you're chased down once more, I won't intervene again. TSK, saying it as if you're really impressive." Liu Yu stuck her tongue out. Ling Han obviously wouldn't argue with the likes of her and left with Hunyo to visit the mineshaft and find Naj Yang. He would kill or cripple Naj Yang if the man deserved. I did not want to waste time here. An adult and a child left. Those people outside immediately glared over, appearing extremely unfriendly. "Stop." A youngster jumped out. 23 or 24 years of age, with the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier cultivation, placed in the desolate north, that was genius level. Ling Han sighed. Why did people always have to ask for trouble? "What's your relationship with Lady Shuang Shuang?" that youngster asked, his face full of jealousy. A man entered Lady Shuang Shuang's manor alone. Ling Han was the first such case. Although he'd only entered for a short while, and nothing could have happened at all, it still made these men outside burn with jealousy. "None of your business," Ling Han said in a terrible mood. "Step aside, don't ask for trouble." "How arrogant." That youngster sneered and pulled out the long sword at his hips, shaking it slightly. Its chilling glare was piercing. Daring to be disrespectful towards Bo family's descendant. "Die." He brazenly attacked with his sword, venting personal hate under fake righteousness. The sword struck towards Ling Han's vital parts, evidently aiming to take Ling Han's life. Chapter 520, Bo Family's 7th Young Master. Chapter 520, Bo Family's 7th Young Master. Reverie _ Haha, that's Bo Family's 7th Young Master, known for being domineering. After not seeing Lady Shuang Shuang for 3 consecutive days, Bo Yongfeng's mood was terrible to begin with. This guy's hit the muzzle. Bo Family's one of the 7 great families in the Imperial City, with a spiritual pedestal tier elite keeping watch. Even the royal family has to give some face, so what if they kill someone? It's over for this guy. Everyone discussed animatedly, delighting in Ling Han's misfortune. They were in a bad mood that Ling Han could enter Yun Shuang Shuang's manor by himself. They simply didn't have guts like Bo Yongfeng, daring to attack publicly. Xiao, a sword came. The chilling chi was like a sharp saber. Ling Han shook his head. He originally only wanted to teach the other party a lesson, but since this person attacked aiming to take his life, he obviously would show no mercy. With a casual flick of a finger, a forceful gust of wind was fired out, and with a pu, the sword that immediately reversed and pierced Bo Yongfeng's forehead, coming right out the other end. The head was pierced thoroughly, so the person was definitely dead. Bo Yongfeng looked blankly at Ling Han, as if unable to believe that he would die in such a way. 2 streams of blood tears flowed from his eyes as his body fell towards the ground, raising the dust off the ground. Instantly, all voices disappeared, and only the sound of heavy breathing was left. Bo Yongfeng definitely didn't count as an elite in the Imperial City, but cultivation of the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier wasn't low, either. Moreover, Ling Han was young, looking 18 to 19 years old, so how strong could he possibly be? However, as it happened, he killed Bo Yongfeng with a single finger. Bo Yongfeng, an outstanding figure amongst the younger generation in the Bo family. Although he pursued carnal pleasures, wasn't this normal for youngsters? Bo family had placed high expectations on this family member that was extremely likely to become a spiritual pedestal tier being. However, it was obviously all void now. Such great nerve, to kill even Bo family's young master. This thing was serious. Bo family's rage would shake the entire imperial city. In the manor, on the balcony, Yun Shuang and the sisters were watching Ling Han leave, but after seeing this scene, they were also shocked, with their small mouths open wide. This guy attacked too viciously, killing the person right away. This guy can stir up trouble better than me, Liu Yu muttered. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, anyone else wants to stop me? Everyone hurriedly shook their heads in unison. Amongst the younger generation, spiritual ocean tier experts hadn't appeared, so no one dared to make an enemy of Ling Han. Killing Bo Yongfeng in one move, everyone obviously assumed that Ling Han was a spiritual ocean tier expert. Based on his age, this was already an overestimation. Let's go, Ling Han said to Hunyo. Yes. Hunyo agreed in a clear and bright voice, following behind Ling Han. Everyone could only watch them go, and only after Ling Han left did they realize their backs were covered in cold sweat. They hurriedly dispersed in an uproar. Bo family's young master was killed, so they obviously had to spread the news out. Otherwise, if the murderer escaped, the Bo family might take their anger out on them. Sister, I just realized, I actually can't see through this guy's cultivation, Liu Yu suddenly said. Liu Feng also nodded, and said, I'm already at the spiritual ocean tier, but I still can't see through young Master Han's cultivation. Could it be? The sisters looked at each other and said simultaneously, the spiritual pedestal tier. That's impossible, young Master Han's only so old. 2 years ago, he was still just at the element gathering tier. How could he now be at the spiritual pedestal tier? Yun Shuang said in disbelief. That's right. The sisters shook their heads. This was certainly too ridiculous. Aya, we have to go. Bo Yongfeng died here, and if the investigation leads to us, we're doomed. The Liu sisters left hastily. They were fugitives. Ling Han and Hunyo strolled about. Their next target was 15,000 meters east of the imperial city, the mineshaft which had been exploited thousands of years ago. It had some strange metal ores, but due to an ominous accident, the mineshaft had been sealed long ago. Only in the recent half a year was it reopened. Very soon, Ling Han discovered pursuers behind them, but he didn't pay attention to it. In the small fire country, no one could pose a threat to him. After exiting the city gates, he and Hunyo continued east, and immediately saw a crimson-red mist that covered the sky. It was impenetrable even with Ling Han's eyesight. Ling Han was slightly surprised. There, very not good, not good. Hunyo shook her head and revealed a vigilant expression. Even Hunyo said so. Ling Han was even more shocked. Hunyo feared nothing in heaven or earth. At that time, she skipped and jumped about inside the demonic chi, but now she actually showed fear. Apparently, this mineshaft was truly something more than met the eye. Looks like he somewhat underestimated Na Zhiyang. Clearly knowing that people died here every day, he was still bent on excavating. Could some treasure be buried within the mine? However, looking at the pervasive crimson chi, this probably wasn't a treasure, but an ominous thing instead. A greatly ominous thing, even more so a reason to go see it. Ling Han nodded. His parents and family were all here. He was afraid that something similar to that of a 1,000-corpse sect conspiracy would happen, making the entire desolate north a land of the dead. The lurking perils had to be eliminated. Nyo, want to enter the Black Tower first? Ling Han asked. Hunyo bit on her finger, thinking, and said, no need for now. In other words, when they really entered the mineshaft, or stayed there for too long, even Hunyo would possibly not be able to endure it. Ling Han became even more vigilant, but fortunately, those who entered the mineshaft suddenly died only on the second day they came out, so as long as it wasn't instant death, he could enter the Black Tower and invoke its power to resist whatever threat that would be. He and Hunyo walked towards the mineshaft, but more and more people tailed them and were becoming bolder, no longer in fear of being discovered by Ling Han. When they almost arrived at the mineshaft, 10 people caught up to them. Halt! A middle-aged man yelled loudly and caught up in a few large strides. His face was ashen and killing intent filled his gaze. He was Bo Wen Lin Bo Yong Feng's father and had the cultivation of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. After being informed that his son was killed by someone, he immediately came out chasing. "Killed my son, and still want to walk away from it," he said, clenching his teeth. "So what do you want?" Ling Han said indifferently. "Out to kill," Bo Wen Lin said fiercely, "a life for a life." Ling Han shook his head and said, "If you attack, then it'll be the death of father and son. I'll give you a chance, leave now. If you attack me, then you'll be seeking your own death." He turned and continued to walk towards the mineshaft. Being glanced at by Ling Han, Bo Wen Lin instantly felt a terrible chill well up inside his heart, not daring to attack. He clenched his fists and watched Ling Han go into the distance, involuntarily revealing a grim smile. Everyone knew that entering the mine meant certain death. Well, although he couldn't personally take revenge, the most important thing was the result. He stared at Ling Han to confirm that Ling Han entered the mine and didn't just pretend to do so, taking the chance to slip away. Chapter 521 Entering the Mineshaft. Chapter 521 Entering the Mineshaft. Reverie _ The mineshaft was heavily surrounded by guards not to stop people from entering, but to prevent people from escaping. After knowing what this place was, who would run in on their own accord? Every day, many people were detained and escorted here, temporarily staying here. After the previous group of miners died, the new bunch would obviously be sent down. Those who refused to go down, immediately beheaded. Under the heavy pressure, even if they could only live for a few days, many people wanted to bet their luck maybe they would be an exception and not die. To prevent the escape of the miners who temporarily lived here, a tall wall was erected, piled up from heavy rocks. It definitely couldn't be dug through by normal people. It was like the Great Wall, reaching 65 meters, and just as hard to leap over. Moreover, guards patrolled underneath the tall wall. Escaping was as hard as climbing the skies. Of course, this was all with regards to normal people. Ling Han and Hu Niu leapt up, arriving on the other side of the tall wall. "Who are you guys?" a guard immediately asked as 7 spears pointed towards them simultaneously. "Let them in." Bo Wen Lin appeared. He stood on the tall wall in the distance. Once Ling Han entered the mineshaft, he would help along the way. The enemy wanted to suicide, so he obviously wouldn't mind giving it a push. After all, he couldn't see through Ling Han, who gave him a sense of extreme danger. Thus, he didn't want to fend against Ling Han head-on. "Yes, Lord Bo," the guards replied at once. Their duty was to stop miners from escaping. Someone wanted to go in? No matter, they'd die the second day after coming out anyway. Ling Han surveyed the area. Ahead was a large-scale mineshaft in the open, with interlocked adits unearthing downwards continuously, unfathomably deep. Even having dug so deep, water didn't come out from the bottom. Looking from here, not even a single miner could be seen. Apparently, they'd already entered the depths of the mineshaft. Threads of crimson-red gas rose up from within the mineshaft and stopped when they reached 3 to 1,000 to 2,000 meters up, forming a giant red cloud. Hu Niu bared her teeth to reveal a fierce look, appearing quite anxious. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless, yet took large strides towards the mineshaft. When Ling Han's figure disappeared at the edge of the mineshaft, Bo Wen Lin revealed a cold smile. Now Ling Han was dead for sure, unless he stayed inside the mineshaft his entire life. But was he able not to eat and drink? Ling Han entered the mining area. Underneath his feet was loosened soil. Crimson-red soil wasn't a rare sight, but here it was ridiculously scarlet, as if dyed in blood. Especially when there was red gas rising continuously, appearing extremely eerie. "I sense an ill omen," Ling Han said. This was based on pure instinct. "Yes." Hu Niu nodded emphatically. The two continued to advance. They could fly physically, but didn't choose to do so. The soil and rocks here all gave Ling Han an extremely strange feeling. He picked up a few rocks and some soil to store it into the black tower, then took Hu Niu inside as well. "Small tower, can you see anything special about these things?" Ling Han asked. Small Tower appeared and said, "Cursed soil. People who don't have a strong enough natal horoscope will die soon after contact." Cursed. Ling Han was astounded. He had never heard of this type of power. Could it be that cursing someone to die was not just in speech, but could truly make someone die? And natal horoscope, what was that? Curse is also a type of power derived from the Great Tao. It's ceaseless and can manifest itself in various ways, Small Tower said leisurely. "So I'm also affected by the curse now?" Ling Han asked. "Yes, stepping on the cursed land, you obviously suffered from the curse, but your natal horoscope is very tough, so you won't die, at least you won't die from this amount. This level of cursed power is something I can easily neutralize," Small Tower said. "And what's that natal horoscope?" Ling Han asked again. Small Tower swayed a little and said, "Why do you have so many questions? Ask when you don't know, this is a good habit," Ling Han said smilingly. "Natal horoscope, destined at birth, is influencing your fate to a great degree," Small Tower said. "In your two lives, your natal horoscopes are the same, making it possible to fuse two souls, and not making it just a simple possession." "Elaborate." Ling Han suddenly became interested. "I don't have the interest to satisfy your curiosity." Small Tower immediately became haughty. Although there isn't much cursed power contained in the soil, to reach such a degree simply from it overflowing, a cursed tool or a person with special natal horoscope is definitely buried underneath the land, forming the cursed power. "What about Hu Niu, would she be affected?" Ling Han asked again. "This little girl's natal horoscope is too special. I can't see through her if I don't use the power of origin source," Small Tower said dully. Ling Han finally dropped his worries and exited the Black Tower with Hu Niu, continuing onwards. What Nag Yang and Fire Emperor conspired? Could it be for the cursed tool within the mining area? No one would steal dead people, unless it was the Thousand Corpse sect. The two treaded on slightly wet land and walked downwards. It was like a bowl. The further out, the wider it was, and the further in, the narrower it was. As they ventured deeper, the surroundings became dimmer, and if it weren't for Ling Han and Hu Niu's extraordinary eyesight, they'd probably be blind with open eyes. However, going down another stretch of the road, the flicker of torches could be seen. In such darkness, one couldn't possibly mine ores after all. Seeing Ling Han's carefree look, with a little girl on the side pulling on the hems of his clothes, a few miners revealed an expression of disbelief and began to doubt their eyes, wondering whether it was an illusion or not. Ling Han's gaze swept by. He only saw that these people's faces were numb all over. After they entered here, they were equivalent to dead men, so who would still be composed? Food. Food. When they saw the dried meat in Hu Niu's hands, their gazes lit up, as if they were travelers seeing an oasis in the desert. Rushing over, they looked like they were going to forcibly take it. Ling Han was amused. A few normal people wanted to rob him and Hu Niu. Hu Niu was most protective of her food, and immediately revealed a vicious glare. They dared to rob her food. Ling Han pulled on Hu Niu and said with a smile, "Want food? Sure, but answer a few questions." He waved his finger and immediately left a deep mark on a rock, frightening the miners into an immediate halt. Those people stared at the dried meat in Hu Niu's hands, drooling as they asked, "What do you want to know?" "The situation here. Tell me all you guys know." Those people looked at each other and nodded, beginning to talk one after another. They were sent here 7 days ago and brought 2 days' worth of food and water into the mine. If they wanted to acquire more food, they could only do their best to mine ore, and use the ores to exchange for food. However, the ores were very rare here, so they all looked hungry as wolves, almost cannibalizing each other. Ling Han found it strange and asked, "The people outside will actually replenish your food? How do they give it to you?" Chapter 522, Blood-Red Ores. Chapter 522, Blood-Red Ores. Reverie _ The miners explained one by one. Ling Han gave them food to dispel their misgivings as they told him everything he wanted to know. So, it turned out that one would die on the second day of leaving the mineshaft. That was right, but it didn't mean that one wouldn't die if one didn't leave. In here, some people would die suddenly after 3 to 4 days, and some people could drag on for 10 days to half a month, but without exception, all would die in the end. With a day of life, they would linger on whilst at death's door for 1 day, they still needed to struggle to fill their stomachs. The guards didn't dare to enter the mineshaft and could only take food to exchange for the ores they mined at the separation of the mining area, throwing back and forth. However, no one dared to hide the food in the mining area, since it would be robbed clean by others. They ate it immediately as they got it and definitely wouldn't leave a single bit. Although this was a mineshaft, there weren't many blood-red ores, so some people who had a tough life weren't killed by the curse but died of hunger and thirst. No one would think of eating their corpses, because the dead's meat was black, extremely toxic or something. Anyway, whoever ate it would die. Thus, other than the misdeed of some people eating others at first, it never happened again. Not everyone was doing their best to dig ores. Some people banded together, or those who thought they were strong enough, began the business of robbing. However, the people here died too quickly, and all gangs and elites would soon vanish into thin air. As Ling Han listened, he didn't quite know how to feel. "They're so pitiful," Hunyo said. "Never would have thought this little girl would pity others." Ling Han rubbed Hunyo's head and said, "Nyo's grown up, knowing to care for others. However, they can't steal Nyo's food to eat." Hunyo immediately defended her rights. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said to those miners, "Did you guys dig up any ores? Give it to me, sell me a piece." He took out a bunch of food and water again. "I'll give it to you. I'll also give it to you. Buy mine." Those miners hurriedly crowded in, fumbling out blood-red rocks that were pathetically small. The largest one was only the size of a pinky. Fearing that Ling Han would be dissatisfied, they looked at him with hopeful eyes, fearing that he'd say no. Because Ling Han gave much more food than the guards outside did, and it was also much tastier. Ling Han had mixed feelings. It was only some food, yet it could make people so meek and subservient. He distributed the food to everyone and stored those ores, an extremely small amount that could all be held within a single grasp. He placed the ores in his hand and instantly felt the martial flower within his body aroused with an intense rapacious, wanting to devour and absorb these rocks, to be precise, a certain substance within the rocks. At this moment, 5 burly men came out from the mine roads at the bottom, and seeing the food in people's hands, they instantly revealed an expression of burning desire. Each one of them revealed a threatening look and yelled, "Hand over all the food." A burly fellow pointed at Hunyo and said, "Brother Yang, there's also a little girl." "What, a girl?" Brother Yang saw Hunyo and instantly licked his lips. "I love these young chicks the most. Haha, I've held back in here for 10 days. Today, not only can I get a delicious meal, but also feel some pleasure." Ling Han sighed. Inside the mineshaft, the ugliness of human nature was enlarged infinitely, and passing a day without knowing whether tomorrow would come, whose evilness within wouldn't be unleashed. Anyway, if one didn't have many days to live, why not do as one pleased for once? This Brother Yang was obviously the typical case. However, this person's natal horoscope was truly tough. Staying in here for 10 days and not having his life taken away, this confirmed an old saying that bad guys lived for thousands of years. Seeing these 5 people, the miners all trembled in fear. These 5 had a notorious reputation. It was said that before the other miners came, the 5 were already tyrants here, but they could never die. The gods truly had no eyes. They had already fallen to such a degree and had to be bullied by these scums. "Little beauty, brother will take you to have some fun." Brother Yang stared at Hunyo, almost drooling out of his mouth. "The gods won't take you, then I will." Ling Han snorted faintly and pointed out with a finger. Pu, a hole opened in Brother Yang's head and penetrated all the way to the back of the head, blood mixed with white-colored brains splattering violently. Everyone was first startled, and then the 5 burly fellows immediately screamed. If one didn't personally hear it, it was truly hard to imagine that 4 burly men could actually let out such a womanish scream. They turned to run right away, knowing they bumped into a hard spot. "All of you can stay." Ling Han flicked his fingers and 4 flashes of sword chi fired out. Pu, 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 the 4 people instantly fell to the ground, thoroughly dead. The miners looked at Ling Han with gazes of reverence, and also filled with gratitude because once Ling Han showed his strength, they definitely would reply honestly. However, Ling Han chose to use food to exchange with them, evidently treating them as humans. So we're still human. Some spirit ignited with the miners' eyes, so they weren't walking corpses waiting for death to befall them. Ling Han saw this, and made up his mind to immediately communicate with the Fire Emperor and Ji Yang, making them give up on the idea of excavating the mineshaft. Then, he would store all the miners into the Black Tower, purify the curse on them, and then have them leave. They were just a few normal people, and couldn't possibly discover the secret of the Black Tower. They would only feel as if they slept, and then everyone would return to normal. With his mind set, Ling Han turned around. The martial celestial flower within his body could no longer endure the intense craving to devour these ores. Ling Han tried to refine the smallest rock, and a strange power was instantly extracted from within the ore and entered his dantian, being absorbed by the martial celestial flower. The vein-like patterns on the celestial flower radiated and raised a wave of red qi. The celestial flower grew slightly. The extent was truly pathetic, but Ling Han was sure that the martial celestial flower certainly grew a little. However, his bloodlust was also stimulated, giving him the urge to act violently. This was shocking. The martial celestial flower's growth couldn't be separated from one's understanding of martial arts without deepening martial comprehension. The celestial flower would never grow and bear fruit in the end, birthing a spiritual infant. Ling Han had the complete martial arts experience, so he naturally didn't need martial comprehension, but for others, martial comprehension was the most important thing after crossing into the flower blossom tier. These ores could let martial artists go around it. Inconceivable. If there were a bit more of these ores, then wouldn't a flower blossom tier, spiritual infant tier, and even a shattering void tier be easily achievable? Ling Han immediately stored the rest of the ores into the Black Tower, and said, "Small tower, analyze it, what are these things?" Chapter 523, Criminals on the Death Row. Chapter 523, Criminals on the Death Row. It's an ordinary rock, with a slight bit of source power. Small Tower very quickly transmitted a divine sense message to him. Ordinary? Ling Han was surprised. A rock that was capable of directly raising the martial cultivation of a flower blossoming tier cultivator, could it actually be ordinary? If there was a countless number of these ordinary rocks, it was guaranteed that even a pig could advance to the shattering void tier. Even becoming an immortal might not be impossible. It would not be inappropriate to call them divine rocks, so how could they possibly be ordinary? Origin power? Ling Han shook his head. Why can't I sense that? Not origin power, but source power, Small Tower explained. Ling Han was startled and asked, the same kind of source power in the primal chaos source rock? That's correct. But the amount of source power inside is pitifully little. I can't be bothered to absorb it, Small Tower declared in its undertone. Just hear what it was saying. Ling Han gritted his teeth. You did it deliberately, didn't you? Trying to infuriate him, right? He said, I won't mind if you get me some, the more the better. He did not need martial comprehension, but his parents did. If there was a large supply of this type of mineral rock, he was sure that Ling Dongxing and Yu Hongchang would be able to smoothly break through to the flower blossom tier. He suddenly understood. Why was the Fire Emperor willing to spare no expense to obtain these ores? That was because this could allow one, in a situation wherein they possessed no cultivation technique and did not have enough ability of comprehension, to complete the leap over the dragon's gate leading to transcendence from this mortal world. However, if that was the case, it would be a little difficult for him to persuade the Fire Emperor to stop. Because this involved breaking through to the next major cultivation tier, which also meant the difference of an additional 200 years of lifespan. Without breaking through to the flower blossom tier, mortals would only possess a mere 100 years of lifespan. The Fire Emperor had used up at least half his lifespan, so stopping him from breaking through to the flower blossom tier would be equivalent to taking his life. He was sure that this emperor would definitely not be persuaded easily. Since he is not willing to listen to persuasion, then I can only beat him into submission, Ling Han thought very violently. These rocks also possess extremely large amounts of violent traits. If you absorb too much, with your current cultivation level, you will definitely not be able to control it. You will experience a drastic change in character, and become a wild man that only knows slaughter and bloodshed, Small Tower said. When Ling Han heard this, he immediately gave up the thought of bringing some of these mineral rocks for his parents, and asked, even the Black Tower is unable to erase these emotions inside them. The hardest thing to grasp is human nature. Unless I erase all your memories completely, Small Tower suggested. Forget it. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head. He had absolutely no desire to erase his parents' memories and for them to become complete strangers. Furthermore, he had a lot of confidence that he could deliver his parents up to the flower blossom tier. With an additional 200 years of time, he should be able to enter into the realm of immortals and get an immortal alchemical pill for his parents to help them succeed instantly. Ling Han was still quite confident in his personal talent in alchemy. Ling Han decided to deal with Nag Yang and the Fire Emperor first, then come back here to study this mineshaft and find out what exactly was buried inside. The two of them very quickly exited the mineshaft and began walking towards the city walls. Halt, the guards called out. The command they had received was not to allow anyone to leave this place. Bo Wenlin appeared as well, a cold smirk at the corners of his lips, and said, young man, you are really acting recklessly. You even dared to enter into this mineshaft of death. Now, you only have half a day's time left to live. Ling Han smiled faintly. His natal horoscope was extremely tough. Unless he stayed in the mineshaft for a number of years, he would not be affected by the curse. Furthermore, even if he was, didn't he still have the Black Tower? This divine item had extraordinary skill in matters like eliminating evil and curses. Since I only have half a day left I should go and cause great havoc, he declared, putting on a pretense of madness. Bo Wenlin immediately looked wary. Previously, he had not made a move because he had sensed that Ling Han was not someone to be trifled with. And now, this guy, who was not to be trifled with, only had less than half a day to life, then that would be even more horrible. Who would be willing to risk their life against someone who was going to die? Young man, you are definitely going to die. I can't bother to drop down to your level. However, I will follow you and watch you die, he declared. Ling Han grinned, and asked, really? You will follow me wherever I go? You dare? Haha, is there any place in this world that I, Bo Wenlin, dare not go? Bo Wenlin laughed coldly. Then, come, Ling Han said with a smile, striding forwards. He was heading in the direction of the Imperial City, and Bo Wenlin stopped the guards here from pursuing. Otherwise, how would these people possibly be able to stop Ling Han? Ling Han was not walking very fast. He only entered the Imperial City after close to half an hour had passed. Let's quickly go and watch, quick. 2 female assassins have been arrested, and they are about to be beheaded at the Eastern Gate in a public display. He had just entered the city when he heard a passerby running around and announcing the news. He looked very excited, and attracted a large number of people to follow him. Female assassins, and there were 2 of them. It couldn't be Liu Feng-er and her sister, right? Ling Han immediately changed course and headed towards the Eastern Gate as well. How had these 2 women compromised their identities and whereabouts and actually fallen into the hands of the imperial family? He sped up slightly, and in just a few minutes, he had arrived at the Eastern Gate. He saw a tall stage had been erected in a public square. There were 2 girls being held down on the executioner's block. Their hair hung loose, and there was no way to distinguish their appearance. But with how Ling Han was familiar with the air of these 2 girls, he could confirm that these were the Liu sisters. Ari, were these 2 people really made out to be assassins? At the side, someone was announcing the crimes of these 2 girls. They had attempted to assassinate an important minister, Nag Yang, committed an offense against imperial authority, and now, they were to be beheaded in public as a warning to the others. The move to behead these 2 beauties in public, furthermore one carried out with such expediency, was made probably because the Fire Emperor's forceful excavation of the mineshaft had caused seething discontent among the citizens. As a result, he deliberately chose to execute these 2 girls in such a public manner to suppress the whole nation, especially the rebellious feelings in the imperial city. Assassinate Nag Yang? Then these 2 young girls must definitely be good people. The gods are blind, they actually did not allow that bastard to be killed. Instead, 2 good people will die. Sure, be quiet. Don't you want to live anymore? The masses were embroiled in a furious discussion, and all expressed sympathy for Liu Feng-er and her sister, as well as their deep-seated hatred for Na Zhiyang. Ling Han did not immediately move to save them. He wanted these 2 girls to learn to be more obedient, so that they would not be some assassins in future. They were absolutely not cut out for this profession. Bo Wenlin naturally followed him here. He could not help but look extremely surprised. This person who was about to die was still in the mood to watch another person's execution. Just how thick were his nerves? The time is up. Commence the execution. An executioner walked up the tall stage. His upper body was bare, and he held a gigantic broadsword in his hand. He took a drink of wine, then spat it all over the blade. Then he raised it high, and under the sun of dusk, a forlorn light was reflected from his blade. Liu Feng-er and her sister's cultivation had obviously been sealed off. For the majority of cultivators, if their cultivation was sealed, then they would not be able to circulate origin power to protect themselves. In that case, their defenses would actually not be much higher than an ordinary person's. This executioner was in the element-gathering tier, and with a wave of his blade, one of the 2 sisters would definitely lose their head. Sure, the broadsword slashed downwards. But the expected scene of a head falling to the ground and blood spurting everywhere did not appear. Instead, a young man had suddenly appeared on the tall stage, and holding onto the blade with a single hand. Chapter 524, Forcefully Seizing the Execution Ground. Chapter 524, Forcefully Seizing the Execution Ground. Who was that, who actually planned to forcefully seize the execution ground? How dare you? One of the officials supervising the execution jumped out. He was in the spiritual ocean tier, and in a small place like Fire Country, he could definitely be considered a master. He glared furiously at Ling Han and said, "Where has this madman that would dare to be so outrageously bold come from?" Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "Under the command of His Excellency, Bo Wenlin, please hold the execution." Pu. Not far off, Bo Wenlin immediately choked. This was an injustice, a colossal injustice. This brat was really reckless. Not only did he kill a member of the Bo clan, he actually planned to make bogus accusations of his victim as well. But this brat was destined to be a dead man, so what else did he dare not do, and what other reservations would he have left? Bo Wenlin, as a great master of the spiritual ocean tier, in addition to the reputation of the Bo clan, was unknown to none in the imperial city. Instantly, countless eyes swept over to focus on him. With their united actions, that official naturally spotted Bo Wenlin as well. He instantly erupted into a great rage and exclaimed, "Master Bo, you actually dared to command another to seize the execution ground by force. What a treasonous action this is. What the fuck?" Bo Wenlin hurriedly leaped out and said, "Master Go, please do not misunderstand. I don't know this brat at all. Master Bo, your words have truly made me sorrowful." Ling Han pretended to be sad. "Didn't you agree that you would become my sturdy support, and no matter what happened, you would be there to back me up? Master Bo, these are your precise words. Wherever I go, you would follow, isn't that right?" Bo Wenlin could not deny it at this moment. He had indeed said that wherever Ling Han went, he would dare follow, but with the way that Ling Han had simply picked out these words and repeated them, their meaning was completely different. He had been used to standing in a high position. How could he have possibly encountered this kind of situation in the past? He had actually turned dumb from his anger, and did not know how he should refute this accusation. But in the eyes of others, this was obviously a tacit agreement. Hiss, Old Nine of the Bo clan is really brave that he dares to even seize the execution ground by force. Master Bo is really a good man. He knows that anyone who attempts to assassinate Na Zhiyang are faithful officials and martyrs, and wanted to leave behind sparks for Fire Country. That's odd. When did Bo Wenlin make a turn like he's a completely different person that he would actually do something like this? Some were praising Bo Wenlin, whereas others were expressing doubt. There was really too wide a disparity between his usual behavior and his actions now. Bo Wenlin was a master in the spiritual ocean tier, and thus naturally heard the whispers of the masses. Inwardly, he wanted to throw up blood. He was absolutely not that kind of man, all right? What business was it of his if commoners lived or died? It was only because Ling Han had killed his son that he had made a move to stand and oppose Ling Han. As a result, Ling Han had actually dug out such a gigantic pit for him to leap into. Master Bo, my mission has been completed, so I'll hand things over to you now, Ling Han said, smiling, then said to the two girls, quickly thank Master Bo for his kindness in saving your lives. Liu Feng and Liu Ru's chains had been unlocked by Ling Han, and their cultivation was unsealed as well, so they recovered their cultivation. They were not the slightest bit dumb, and immediately cooperated with Ling Han's act, bowing daintily in Bo Wenlin's direction and both saying at the same time, many thanks, Master Bo. Right, even if he jumped into the Yellow River, there would be no way to wash himself clean. 1. Let's go. Ling Han stretched out a hand each and grabbed both girls, immediately fleeing. Master Bo, we'll meet again in the usual place. No way you are leaving. One of the supervising officials quickly moved. He stretched out his right hand to grab Ling Han's back. He was skilled in palm techniques, and with this move of his palm, tightly woven patterns flickered brightly. It was as if a tree demon had spread out its roots, clawing at Ling Han. In truth, a mere breath of air from Ling Han could easily kill that official. However, he used the ghostly immortal steps. His figure moved in a bizarre manner and easily dodged his attacker's palm strike. Then, his figure sped up, and the farther he went, the faster he moved. Bo Wenlin hurriedly broke out into run in pursuit. He definitely had to detain Ling Han, or he would really be unable to clear his name. Master Bo, you intend to flee as well? The supervising official sneered darkly. His figure made a sharp about turn, and delivered a palm strike in Bo Wenlin's direction. Your sister. Bo Wenlin's nose was almost bent in his anger, and he exclaimed, Master Go, I was going to recapture those 3 escaping criminals. Why didn't I see Master Bo make a move just now, then? And now you are so proactive. Master Bo, you wouldn't be purposely stopping me from pursuing the criminals, would you? The supervising official asked coldly, his expression clearly saying that he had seen through Bo Wenlin's deception. Fuck your sister, you're the one stopping me now. Bo Wenlin could do nothing but make a move of his own. He had similar ability with that supervising official, so how could he simply allow the latter to attack him as he liked? However, with this move to defend himself, it was as if it was a confirmed fact that he was trying to assist Ling Han and the others in their flight, making the supervising official smirk repeatedly. This fuck asterisk, what the fuck? At this moment, there were 10,000 curse words streaming through his heart. Ling Han brought the 2 girls all the way outside the city, then tossed them away, and said, for assassins to fall low to the extent that you have, it's really enough. Just honestly find a man and marry him, then obediently stay at home to take care of your husbands and teach your children. It's all your fault. You were the one who caused others to misunderstand. In the end, the moment we left Yun Shuang's place, it led to a large number of people all gathering around us to ask this and that. As a result, trouble happened. Liu Ru declared defiantly. Ling Han rolled his eyes and asked, so this is my fault? Naturally. Liu Ru pushed all the blame onto Ling Han. Ling Han waved his hand and said, fine, I won't argue with you two. In short, the 2 of you have to leave the Imperial City immediately. Then what about Na Zhiyang? I will deal with him, Ling Han replied calmly. Are you sure you aren't merely boasting? Liu Ru's expression was filled with doubt. Ling Han humphed, and said, if you two still won't leave, then I'll send you both back. I'm sure that Na Zhiyang would extremely hope to see your 2 cut off heads. We'll leave, all right? Liu Ru fumed. Many thanks for saving us again, young Master Han. Liu Feng was much more sensible. She bowed to Ling Han daintily, and forcefully pulled her younger sister into a bow as well. Thanks, Liu Ru said reluctantly. Ling Han nodded, and said, in a few days, at most, you two will hear the news of Na Zhiyang's death, so just go with a peaceful heart for now. Yes. Liu Feng tugged Liu Ru along with her and left. Liu Yu meanwhile, kept turning back around, as if she wanted to continue arguing with Ling Han. Sister, he is the son of the skies, and not someone we would be able to reach. Even if we force ourselves to reach up to him, we would only be scorched mercilessly. Liu Feng was aware of her sister's feelings. Don't look at how she was fighting so fiercely with Ling Han. In truth, she was simply low in emotional intelligence, and did not know how to express her own feelings. Thus, she could only pester him endlessly in order to attract Ling Han's attention. Liu Yu turned her head back round, her face covered with traces of tears. Ling Han returned to the imperial city, and had not even reached the city's entrance yet when he saw Bo Wenlin and that supervising official had joined forces and chased him all the way here. Who knew whether they had resolved the misunderstanding or otherwise? Hunyo did not make a sound all this while, but was in an extremely good mood at this moment because the two hateful women had left, and she was able to monopolize Ling Han again. Brat, you actually dared to return? Bo Wenlin asked darkly. He was really about to be angered to death by Ling Han's actions. Ling Han smiled, and asked, with Master Bo to back me up, what do I dare not do? Die. Bo Wenlin charged out. He definitely had to apprehend Ling Han personally to prove that he indeed had no relation with Ling Han. Chapter 525 Nag Yang. Chapter 525 Nag Yang. Master Bo, you are being naughty again. Ling Han laughed. Xiao, Hunyo streaked out and slammed a direct punch into Bo Wenlin's lower abdomen. How terrifying was her battle prowess. Added together with the tremendous advantage of 2 major cultivation tiers, it was naturally a doubtless crushing suppression. With a peng, Bo Wenlin became akin to a cooked lobster, his whole body arched. Ling Han deliberately heaved a sigh, and asked, Master Bo, why do you have to do this? The execution official's eyes were so wide they were in danger of popping out. That was Bo Wenlin, someone whose cultivation and ability were on par with his. In Fire Country, Bo Wenlin was definitely a strong character, yet he was actually knocked over by a punch from a little wisp of a girl. This was a little too much, wasn't it? If he stepped up, wouldn't that be his fate as well? Hiss, where had these 2 monsters come from? Ling Han smiled faintly at the execution official, and asked, are you naughty or nice? Nice. I am very nice, the execution official quickly exclaimed. Hunyo was currently directing a ferocious look at him, which caused his heart to shiver. Ling Han laughed loudly and shot out a foot at Bo Wenlin, directly kicking him to the feet of the execution official, and said, Here, you can take him and report back to complete your mission. Report your sister. In the beginning, the execution official had only been extremely infuriated, but upon thinking deeper, what logic would there be for Old Nine of the Bo clan to align forces with convicted criminals? Therefore, he immediately believed in Bo Wenlin's explanation that he had absolutely no relation with Ling Han or the 2 female criminals. Bo Wenlin groaned miserably. Though that punch of Hunyo's had not taken his life, the little girl did not control her strength, either. The blow was enough to make him feel as if all his internal organs had flipped over, which was an incredibly terrible feeling. Now, he could not even speak. The only thing he felt like doing now was to throw up. Ling Han waved Bo Wenlin off with a hand again, and said, Master Bo, didn't you say you'd follow me to the ends of the earth? Please do not be scared off. With a stride, he turned around and left. The execution official did not dare stop him. Instead, he quickly lifted up Bo Wenlin and followed closely behind as if he was Ling Han's lackey, which made him incredibly sullen. After traveling for a while, Bo Wenlin finally got his breath back, and was capable of walking by himself. However, with every step he took, he could still feel a heart-wrenching agony in his lower abdomen. He pulled aside his robes to take a look, and could see there was a bluish bruise on his lower abdomen. The center of the bruise was already beginning to turn black. Hiss, this little girl was really ruthless in her attack. The direction they're heading in is Nag Yang's residence. Not good. Bo Wenlin and the execution official's facial expressions changed drastically. This was a very easy guess. Those 2 female criminals had been convicted with the crime of attempted assassination of Nag Yang, and since Ling Han was in cohorts with them, it was extremely natural to deduce that he, too, had the idea to assassinate Naz Yang. Naz Yang, a popular subject of the current Fire Emperor who had overflowing power in his grasp. If they allowed Ling Han to kill Naz Yang, the two of them, as related individuals, would definitely have to bear blame as well. Quickly go and inform all the officials. The two of them exchanged a look and hurriedly split ways to complete their respective tasks. Ling Han did not walk too quickly, as if he was giving them time to inform others. He walked slowly and unhurriedly but still arrived at his destination 20+ minutes later. Naz Yang's residence had originally belonged to an imperial prince, but this imperial prince was extremely unsatisfied with his position and secretly planned to seize power. In the end, he had not even begun his plans when he was completely suppressed by imperial might. This residence was naturally confiscated and had now been bestowed upon Naz Yang, which showed how much the emperor favored him. Sure, a troop of soldiers filed out from the main doors, all of them carrying various weapons, looking quite ferocious. A man who looked to be the captain of the troop strode out, a silver helmet on his head and a long sword hanging at his waist, which made him look majestic and imposing. This man was actually in the spiritual pedestal tier. I am the great commander of the internal imperial guards, Sai Kong Zhen. How dare you, fiend? Quickly surrender without resistance, he shouted loudly. Ling Han's gaze swept over the troop, and he smiled. Master Bo, did you not say that you had arranged everything for me and all I have to do is to enter the residence and kill Naz Yang? Why are things different than what we have previously planned? Bo Wenlin was so infuriated he almost stumbled in his anger. When do you plan to stop defrauding me? But at this moment, one of the elites of the spiritual pedestal tier of his clan had already stepped out, so it was not his place to speak at all. Thus, he merely stood humbly and quietly behind that elite member of his clan. Fiend, don't you dare feign madness. Sai Kongzhen stared coldly at Ling Han, not daring to make a reckless move. He had already been informed that the little girl by Ling Han's side was capable of knocking Bo Wenlin down with a single punch, which was extremely bizarre. Therefore, he had no choice but to proceed with extreme caution. Ling Han smiled and said, I have come to converse with Naz Yang, so why is there need for such a big parade of troops? Go and ask Naz Yang to come out. If things can be settled peacefully, then all of us can still drink wine happily tonight. How could a nameless nobody be qualified to meet with Master Na? Sai Kongzhen asked icily. Ling Han sighed, and said, these words are much too hurtful, and I really do not like hearing such. Hunyo, what do you think we should do? Beat them up? Hunyo waved her little fists in the air. We use might to enforce submission. What a violent little girl. Ling Han smiled and said, you all have heard it. We use might to enforce submission. Since Naz Yang is not willing to come out, then we can only barge in and directly drag him out for negotiations. When he saw Ling Han step forward, planning to advance, Sai Kongzhen immediately stepped into his path. He directly drew his sword and delivered a slash in Ling Han's direction. He was an elite of the spiritual pedestal tier whose ability far exceeded Bo Wenlin and that execution official. As his slash advanced, not only did 4 flashes of sword chi form, there were also multiple flames dancing, making this attack look extremely terrifying. Nyo's little iron fist. Hunyo rushed out. Peng, one punch was enough to send Sai Kongzhen flying. Pu. When they saw this scene, all of them choked. That was Sai Kongzhen they saw. He was an extreme elite in the 7th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and people stronger than him in the entire Fire country could be counted on 10 fingers. But now, he was actually sent flying by a single punch from a little girl. Who could believe such a thing was possible? Gods, was this little girl a monster? What cultivation level did she have to be at to be able to do something like that? Furthermore, this was only the kid. Ling Han had yet to make a move. Pa, 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 pa. Applause rang out as a white-robed man walked out of the residence. This man was tall and slender, and handsome to the point of being almost beautiful. It was as if his black locks were a spiritual snake, and actually moved without any form of wind blowing. He looked at Ling Han, smiled, and said, "It is such a delight to have friends coming from afar. I am Naji Yang, how should I address this friend?" Surprise flashed through Ling Han's eyes. This Naji Yang was actually in the flower blossom tier. Strange, this was extremely strange. In the 9 nations of the desolate north, there was actually no true cultivator in the flower blossom tier. The so-called flower blossom tier cultivators were in truth simply in pseudo-flower blossom tier, and had only managed to enter this cultivation level with the support of power of the nation. They had exceeded mortality, but how powerful was their battle prowess, and how much their lifespan had increased was a different story. Aside from an overbearing, aggressive character like the Rain Emperor, Ling Han truly did not believe that there would be a genius in the 9 nations of the desolate north capable of taking that step into the true flower blossom tier without aid. But this Naji Yang standing in front of him was genuinely in the flower blossom tier, and had definitely not accumulated such cultivation by depending on power of the nation. With such power, he actually came to the desolate north to be an important official. Ling Han instantly understood. Naji Yang's target definitely had to be that mineshaft. Laboriously scheming and spurring the Fire Emperor to reopen that fatal ancient mine, he naturally should not have been aiming for those mineral rocks that would cause madness. He probably was aiming for the cursed tool that had been sealed under the mine, wasn't he? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.